Except how many times have we seen this and said that same exact thing about cards exactly like this, and then it's like, oh, you draw it at the top, and it's like, I don't have a source.
You see, the pest trigger on attacks now.
But this time, bro, this time for real, bro.
There's also
Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Jank Diver Gaming YouTube channel. My name is Timothy Zaccanino, aka Jank Diver Tim. I'm joined here once again by Danelius and Teld to talk Peasant Cube. This is a Secrets of Strixhaven edition. Oh, actually, hold on. There we go. For my non-YouTube listeners, I put a graduation cap on my head.
A wizarding hat, right? That's what that is.
Ooh, this is not mine, by the way. I'll keep this on until it falls off. How about that? Also, I just realized I always introduce this as welcome back to the YouTube channel, but we've got all these lovely people who listen through other means. I have heard the pleas to put this on Spotify, to put the tier lists on Spotify, and I'm working on it. Let's just say I don't have a lot of time these days, and I don't know a lot about Spotify, so it'll get there eventually. For now, let's focus on Secrets of Strixhaven. If you haven't already, go listen to episode number 65, which will be the mainline review. We'll be reviewing all the mechanics here again from a peasant perspective. And we've got a lot. We had to like hound Danelius a little to take a couple cards off of this list to not record for 5 hours straight. So we narrowed it down. What's your guys' excitement level for Secrets of Strixhaven? Tell it I already know your answer a little bit, but let's assume not everybody listened to our other review.
Yeah, I really, really wish we could just have 10 color pairs more often, and this is the fourth set in a row, I feel like now that's guild set, so I really dislike that. I like Strixhaven a fair amount the first time, but I'll be honest that I forced white black for 90% of that format. That's one of the reasons why I like it so much. I had like an 80% win rate on ladder or something crazy with that deck. So I don't know. It seems like there's some cool spaces that they're playing around in this time around. So I'll play some, but I am more excited for the summer set. That's a Dave Humphrey set with all 10 color pairs. Even if it's Marvel, I'll hold my nose for it. So, but it seems cool set overall.
Yeah, I ended up liking more cards than I expected, but I mean, this isn't a particularly compelling peasant set for our spaces, although there's some cool cards. So I don't know. I kind of agree though. I like the 10 color pair sets. I think these guild sets tend to wear their welcome out very quickly.
Yeah, I think Danelius, you might have been the one to say that TMNT was like a perfect peasant set as far as mechanics go, and SOS is like anti-peasant almost. You've got Grave Break and Red White. You've got instants and sorceries when everything's moving towards non-creatures and artifacts, and you got whatever Simic is doing with X spells.
Yeah,
expensive cards.
Unlike our mainline review, if you didn't watch that too, they really held their punches in the peasant cards a lot more. The mainline cards are completely ridiculous in a lot of cases, and here it's a lot more tame.
Yeah. So obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, you can tell we're tier listing this. We're going to continue doing that for the peasant reviews. Just make sure it makes it more consistent with the other content that we're making for the channel right now. Kind of get our ideas across the board of how we're evaluating cards. If you could scroll up real quick, Danelius, and just kind of go over this for anyone who might be joining, first semester students, if you will. We've got our S tier as the strongest, the highest cube equity cards, the ones that we would basically say you should be playing in every single cube, with maybe some considerations towards being like overpowered in some situations. And A's are slightly below that. We would recommend that you play them, but they're not as good as the strongest possible cards from the set. We'll see if we get any S's out of this set or not. I'm not sure if we've graded any as S or not. If you want to see our grades, we won't mention them for every single card. You can find the show notes in the description wherever you're listening to this and see what we actually graded all of the cards. B's are role players, just your average run-of-the-mill cards, and then you've got C's as your niche role players. These are narrow cards that we don't want to completely dismiss. A lot of the C's end up being cards that we're not super interested in, but we recognize that there are a lot of cubes that they can go in, or if you have a certain build of a cube, they become more interested there. And then we've got D's as like, don't touch these. If we're talking about a card here that we all think is a D, we think there's something interesting to talk about, but ultimately we're going to recommend like, hey, maybe stay away from this one for your cubes. Mechanics, we talked about this. Teld and I talked about this with Chris from a high level perspective. So let's go ahead and bring it down to the peasant perspective and see how these mechanics shake out. As far as returning mechanics go, just to brush through them real quick, we've got Converge and Flashback. Converge being the one that cares about how many colors of mana you've spent to cast things. Though not a lot of compelling Converge cards in the set to begin with, and it's, in my opinion, not a very compelling mechanic in the first place. It is kind of cool that it came off the back of Vivid. You know, Vivid into Converge makes a little bit of, like, thematic sense. And then you've got Flashback, but this is linked to Warhold here. It's Warhold's return in mechanic as a way to enable those Gravebreak strategies. New stuff, though, the big one is Prepared, which, again, just if a creature is prepared, it lets you cast the spell that it has on the right-hand side of the card. And a lot of creatures enter the battlefield prepared, some do not, and some have ways to re-prepare themselves to cast the spell again, some do not, and it's just a one-shot. The lesson I learned from reviewing this with Teld was I need to read the cards. I actually got disappointed pretty heavily with a couple that I found out do not prepare themselves when they enter the battlefield, and then suddenly they went from, like, great cards in my mind to complete trash that you would never play. So we'll be sure to read the prepared cards. How do you guys think about this for Peasant Cube? My comparison was MDFC lands, where it lets you cram a lot of different extra card types into a deck without having to sacrifice on something else. Like MDFCs let you put more lands and more spells in a deck without having to compromise, and this is a way to introduce more instants and sorceries, especially like expensive instants and sorceries into a cube when you wouldn't just play those spells normally.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the idea they were working with here, but like I mentioned earlier, I think here at the common-uncommon level, they really held their punches and made most of the prepared spells not particularly interesting or cubable. There's a couple of exceptions, but I think for the most part, they held back a little too much in what they were doing with them.
Yeah, I think that the prepared stuff I like into Exhaust. I think that for most of these cards, especially the ones that don't re-prepare, they're basically just exhaust abilities, one-shot effects, with the upside of getting non-creature spell triggers out of your creatures, which it can be relevant, especially for Spellslinger cubes or heroic cubes. But yeah, they're largely just exhaust creatures. I do like exhaust as a concept of one-shot abilities. I think it lets them do kind of interesting stuff on cards, but I agree with Teld. I think the majority of the prepared stuff doesn't seem that exciting for Cube. But I could be wrong. We could get into the retail environment and all the prepared stuff is totally broken. We'll have to find out.
Yeah, it probably won't translate too well, though, right? Because you've got, like, you've got Opus, you've got Repartee that, like, make you care about what the spells are doing, and that's why they're pulled back a little bit, and that doesn't quite translate over to Peasant.
Yeah, to be clear, I assume at the retail level, this is going to be a super powerful mechanic. Like, it seems like it's got a lot of synergies, and, like, anytime you can squeeze extra value out of your cards, that's awesome.
Sure. Okay, so guild mechanics here. Besides Flashback, you've got Opus, which cares about casting instants or sorceries, and if you spent 5 or more mana to cast that instant or sorcery, you get a bonus effect. That's the Prismari mechanic. Repartee for Silver Quill is a trigger that you get whenever you cast an instant or sorcery that targets a creature. That can be your opponent's creature or your own creature, so it's kind of like heroic, but it extends that to targeting your opponent's creatures. You've got Infusion, which basically doesn't do anything. You've got Increment. Infusion is if you've gained life this turn, you get some sort of bonus. Increment is kind of like Evolve, if you've ever played with it. When a creature has Increment and you cast a spell using an amount of mana that's greater than that creature's power or toughness, you put a +1/+1 counter on the creature. Notably, that one is not specifically instants or sorceries. It's only any spell you cast. And that's the Quandrix mechanic, obviously. And then there's Paradigm, which we don't need to mention here because it only applies to a cycle of Mythic Rare, so not Peasant Cubable, though it is a very cool mechanic. Notable omission. There ain't no Magecraft here. No Magecraft here. Second off, Danelius asked me how big of a crash out I was going to have that Lesson Learn was not in the set, and I'm going to be just level-headed about it and say that I predicted there would be no Lesson Learn in this set, and it makes sense to me that there's no Lesson Learn in the set, and I still hate them for it because I think Lesson Learn was the coolest thing about original Strixhaven, and I have to imagine, to give the designers credit, this is obviously a sign of intelligence that they knew they were printing super powerful lessons in TLA and that they could not bring back super powerful learn cards without like destroying standard or something.
If by
sad,
intelligence you mean cowardice.
I didn't want to say it.
I made this comment in the Lord's Limited or the Limited Level Ups Discord, but to me, I actually think that the guild nature of Strixhaven, the original Strixhaven, combined with Lesson Learn, actually made for not not a very good experience for most people. It was very one note. You're doing the same things over and over and over and over again, casting the same spells in the same guilds. I kind of like that there's no lesson learned here, even though, yeah, it would have been fun to explore that for a cube. And the first few times you play with it in retail, it's awesome. But I think like the 20th time, it's not it for me personally. But I was very excited about potential in cube, and maybe it's better for all of us that we don't have to test out some of these busted combinations.
Yeah. So I will not get back on a lesson learned soapbox right now and how I think it performs. It's just not the place because it's not here. I am a little surprised they just didn't bring back Magecraft either. Like the 2 hallmark mechanics from the original set not coming back. Like, okay. But both problematic in different ways. And I think the goal here was to make the color pairs feel more distinct by giving them like guild mechanics instead of everything is Magecraft, everything's a wizard or whatever.
Yeah,
so, cool.
It felt like to me they were trying to open it up a little bit too, where there's definitely the guild stuff going on, but it does sort of, looking at the cards, they feel maybe slightly less prescriptive than they did the first time around.
Yeah, I think there's more potential for 3-color decks, and obviously with Converge, they really wanted to push a 5-color deck too. So I'm interested in the limited format for sure.
Yeah. More sad news for us specifically. The bonus sheet, 60-something cards on this bonus sheet, all uncommon, rare, or mythic. There could be some rarity adjustments that we don't know about yet. Every single uncommon that they chose for the bonus sheet was already an arena playable card. So we got nothing for Peasant unless they downshift, like you mentioned, Days. I don't think we should really talk about any of them here because I suspect they will not be rarity downshifted anything, given that they already have curated rarities. But yeah.
This was kind of my crash out because how do we have this bonus sheet and not reprint Lava Dart? I'm sorry. I know I've mentioned that card as one that I really want, so I know there's some personal, maybe bias or desire there for it. But like Lorehold's entire mechanic is casting spells out of the graveyard. How are we not going to print Lava Dart here? Come on.
Yeah, when you mentioned Lorehold, I was like, first off, I already want Lava Dart, but second off, it's perfect for the set. It's 2 spells, it's flashback for Lorehold.
Yeah.
Well, it's really important that they printed a card like Duty Beyond Death, which has so much synergy with what's going on in the format, like Sacrifice and Go Wide. So,
I know you're excited to see Chroma's Will making its return into the
environment.
That'll be fun.
Stop putting a Chroma's Will on bonus sheets. What's wrong with you people? It was in Final Fantasy 2, and it was just the most insane card.
Dude, I lost multiple games in Final Fantasy where like you're so far ahead, you're just like, game's over. And
flying crane technique for a 4.
Yeah, flying crane technique. Yeah.
So stupid. Also, small complaint before we get to the cards. When they did the debut stream, they were talking about the Mystical Archive, and they're like, these are supposed to represent the first time this spell was ever cast. What do you mean? What was the first time Hop to It was cast in the Magic lore? Like, it's just rabbits. What are you talking about? Why did we pick Hop to It? I mean, I know it's a good card and everything, but come on, give me something new for the arena.
I don't think they're allowed to show the art for how Hop to It came to be.
the first time. Yeah, Divine. Never mind. All right, so a little bit of disappointment there, some sweet mechanics that'll come up in different degrees, and yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the cards here. Danelius will be tier list master here, and we've got them all graded. I think there's only one card in this entire list that we have like a big gradation difference on, and I'll either talk you up on it or y'all talk me down. So first card up is Elite Interceptor. It's white for a 1/2 human wizard. It enters prepared, and it has its prepared spell Rejoinder. 1 in a white for a sorcery. You may tap or untap target creature. Draw a card.
Man, I love myself a 1-mana 1/2 that draws a card.
It's quite nice. I think that there's very little reason to be excited about this over the Inspectors, which I think are the obvious comparison that they're making and that makes the most sense. There's not a lot of reason for us to be excited about this over the Inspectors. I do like the artifact that gets made, 2 objects. The fact that the draw gets to get banked, I do think is just better, like banked for future turns, even after the Inspector dies. I think that matters quite a lot. But if you are in a Spellslinger, if you're a Spellslinger, if you care about Heroic, I think that this could even get better than those cards. If you're de-trinketifying your cube, this is like a huge slam dunk for you. And I think that even in our environments, I still would be happy to run this as like an additional Inspector. I think it's that good.
Yeah, yep. I think there's a question of density there because I like all of our 1-drops currently, and we're on quite a number of white 1-drops. This one's like, I mean, this is another good role player in that environment. I just think it's less, like we said, it's a step down, so it's less mandatory to play this one. That being said, it is one of the other things I really like about it is you can go Clarion Spirit into this, activate this, trigger Clarion Spirit on its own. That's really nice. It lets you target your mouse to put a counter on it. I mean, and I think if you're playing in de-trinketed environments or de-tokened environments where this tap effect is going to push damage, kind of like we talked about in the mainline cube review, I do think there's some promise here of this being a pretty good aggressive enabler. But, with as many tokens as float around in our environments, it's hard to imagine this being incredible at doing that. But, it can still create good turns.
But, inspectors often die. You often use them as double blocks. And if this dies, you don't get the card. So that is an important downgrade.
Yeah, there's reasons to want this over an inspector. There's reasons to want inspector. I think what we landed on yesterday was the inspectors are almost certainly better for peasant, like the general peasant cube environment because of the token creation. But at higher power levels, this is maybe even better than the inspectors.
And just to be clear, I fully expect this to be like the highest win rate white common in the entire set.
It looks like it. It triggers repartee, whether you're tapping or untapping your own thing. It's, cast a spell. It does all that good stuff. So sweet little card to start off with for sure. Ennis Debate Moderator is next. This is 1 and a white for a 1/1 legendary human cleric. When it enters, exile up to one other target creature you control. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. At the beginning of your end step, if one or more cards were put into exile this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Ennis. So got a mini little soul herder here. I've been calling it small herder because it's a smaller soul herder.
Yeah, this is their new way of sneaking even more core Skyfishers into your environments.
They're not even being sneaky anymore. It's just
this isn't Skyfisher though. Like only hitting creatures at sorcery speed. I mean, I was actually looking for comps for this and another card in the set, Daydream, which we'll talk about in a second, which does a similar thing. It's sorcery speed, bounce only your own creatures. There's very few cards in the history of the game that do that. Like. Even Icewind Stalwart, which is a card I found that's like a 4-mana 3/3 from a long time ago, but very, very few. Personify is kind of close, but the fact that you can do that instant speed does make it just a different kind of card. So not a lot of great comps for this, but I think there's a good reason for that, which is that it isn't as easy to use this, especially on turn 2, as it might seem. It's like, okay, if you have an Inspector on 1 specifically, then this is a pretty nice follow-up on turn 2, but it's still not like amazing. Now you just made a 2-mana 2/2 Inspector that, unless you have other ways of synergizing around that exile clause, it doesn't really do anything at all. So I think that you want to have two things with this card. Number one, lots of cheap ETB creatures, which again is not necessarily easy to do in either of our environments because we're playing a lot of our ETB value on things like living weapon equipments or builder's talent style cards or whatever, where this doesn't really do anything. So you want to have a lot of those cheap creatures that have ETBs, and then also I think you want some amount of additional ways of exiling in your environment. The nice thing is this is a very forgiving exile clause. Any card you play that says exile on it anywhere basically will trigger this on end step. So I can definitely see a decent enough application for this card. I've seen some people suggest that it's a pretty busted in Peasant. I kind of doubt that's the case.
I'm not really convinced that this is better than Koya from the last set, which was a more flexible card. This card has some impressive double spell turns, but I think you're going to want to have targets that are efficient that you can target, which isn't a given. Like I've tried making, I've drafted Go Ninja Go in a couple of Boros decks now and haven't been able to line up the cards in a way that like I actually could play the Go Ninja Go, and I think that card's more exciting than this one. In terms of the upside, so I think that you're gonna have to line some things up. But this does have kind of the Doo-Doo Weaver Pixie thing of being a fairly efficient form of this, and where that really comes in is like on turn 4, turn 5 when you set up you're tapped out, I play my card, I get my immediate value playing this as the follow up. But you can't really think of this as a 2-drop. This is more like a 4 or 5 mana card.
And also, you got to be careful playing this in a deck with a lot of other effects like this, because then you're going to be stuck in situations like this on 2 and a Soul Herder on 3. It's like, are you actually doing anything? Like, okay, if you played your Inspector on 1, I guess you've gotten ahead kind of a little bit, but I do think you have to be a little bit careful about overloading on this effect in your environment and in your decks.
Yeah, it becomes the sack outlet, sack fodder like situation just with blink and blink targets. Card seems cool. You've already dragged it up to B. I assume for anything where we're lined up on the grade, just go ahead and drag it in the rank where we've all got it. And this is more of a limited thing, but I think the idea here is flashback puts a card in exile that will make this bigger because it doesn't really feel like I guess it's a Silver Coil line card, but feels like more of a Lorehold card. Okay, next up. Possible big hitter here. Group project, 1 and a white for a sorcery. Create a 2/2 red and white spirit creature token. Flashback, tap 3 untapped creatures you control. No mana cost on that. Tap 3 untapped creatures. Make another 2/2 with flashback.
Yeah,
right now, Teld and I have this rated as A, and Danielius, you have it as B. I'm just my assumption with the way Peasant Cube games turn out and how white plays is that this is going to play like 2 mana, make 2/2s like pretty frequently. With the drawback that you're not attacking or blocking on one of those turns as optimally as you could, but I don't know. I feel like you can give that up to just get the best in class 2 mana make 2 bodies card that we've ever seen at Peasant.
Yeah, I mean, this is another not actually a 2-drop, right? I mean, you can obviously, this is a much finer card to play on 2. You can just run this out on 2 if you have nothing else to do. The other card you really can't. That being said, again, just the kind of incredible explosive plays that this is going to enable in the mid game is really impressive, I think. Again, Clarion Spirit into this, like as a follow-up to tap and then trigger the Clarion Spirit, kind of does it on its own. We've seen Battle Screech be incredible. Obviously, that card has double the output in terms of bodies, so that's a little bit different. But these kind of effects are just really powerful. It's not hard to engineer scenarios where you can do this fairly reliably. Not to mention, it's great with cards like Sarn and things like that are really trying to push these sort of synergy spaces. I think this card seems awesome. I could see it underperforming slightly just because there will be spots where you won't be able to tap your dudes without taking a huge chunk of damage, and if that's the case, that's not great for you. But I think most of the time this is going to play out pretty well, and I think more importantly, there's a lot of synergy space for it to occupy while just being a fine card.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. It's possible that it's an A. The 2 comments. One, part of the reason for me why Ennis is a B actually that I didn't mention is white 2s, in my opinion, is just the most competitive slot in Peasant right now. There are so many good white 2s to be playing, and I think that does have to bump everything down slightly in your evaluation. These cards are going up against some of the best cards in Peasant, so that's one consideration. The other is unlike Battle Screech, which obviously there's not a lot of comps for this card. Battle Screech is kind of a comp in a way. Battle Screech is a payoff for going wide, in addition to being like a support piece or enabler. Like if you have a Neighborhood Guardian or Rosie or whatever, then that gets to boost your output. But it's also a payoff. Like as long as you have a good amount of white creature creation in your deck, then usually when you cast Battle Screech, even if you don't have any synergies you're doing with it, you're going to be really happy. I don't really think that's the case with this card. The body seer being vanilla, I do think matters. So I see this much more as a support piece as a payoff, compared to a payoff, and then it's weird as a support piece that also requires other stuff to have been happening for this to work out. So that's not me saying it's a bad card. I think it is clearly a very good card. I personally would say it's a B in the sense that I certainly can imagine it being correct to not run this card in a couple months after testing, but I'll probably test it myself. I think it is probably worthy of testing.
Okay. I think I'm just sticking with A on here. I think the output's good, and I think the work you have to do to make this function as the best in class card is just what you're going to be doing in all of your white decks anyway. Maybe not literally all of them, but majority of them. Next card is the one that I think I am higher on. It has the biggest delta between our grades here, I believe. I have it as B, Teld has it as C, Danielius, you have it as D, basically unplayable. Spirit Call Enthusiast. 2 and a white, 3/3, Cat Cleric at uncommon. Whenever 1 or more tokens you control enter, this creature becomes prepared. Never mind. Yep. Never mind. I blame the designer. I take back what I said about Signs of Intelligence, and I now... Oh my god! I've read this card so many times and thought about this card so many times and gamed out all the different situations, and it does not enter the battlefield prepared. It does not enter prepared.
Right.
Yeah.
So never mind. Egg on my face. D. Hate it. Sucks. Actually, I could still see C here in some world, but oh my god, I'm so sick of this set already.
So I guess I'll go up to bat since I'm now apparently the highest grader of this card. I don't think this is a very great card or anything. I do think it has a space if you're running heroic, valiant, power matters type stuff, repartee, be able to trigger that. Like, I think it also just as like an aggro piece, if you have enough tokens to enable this, like it can push some damage. I don't love that you have to keep sinking mana into it. I think you need to be getting more output out of it. So like you need to want to target things. I think that's the crux of it. And it's a weird card in that we want to be doing heroic, but we also need to have token output. So we're probably going to need like equipment of some sort. So it's a weird card. Like, I'm on the low end of C, just to be clear with this. I probably should put C-. I'll go ahead and change my grade. But I do think there's some amount of space for it in that sort of, care about power, care about heroic / valiant type stuff.
Yeah, I'm so over, 3 mana 3/3s that need a bunch of other stuff going on for you to be happy to play them. I feel like we've just seen this enough now to be relatively confident. Like, I agree with you, maybe in a Spellslinger cube with heroic, maybe, but even there, then you got to be making tokens to even turn this on at all. So, and then after that, you got to spend the mana into it at sorcery speed and target your things. It's like,
Yeah, we can collectively say this is a D then and move on. I don't think it's very good, but I just wanted to shout out that particular possible synergy space.
Yep.
So upset. I did that twice. I did that twice yesterday. Come on, the version of this card that enters prepared is good though. The version of this card
I still want to say it's good. It's interesting. It's funny because I was looking at the document and the entire I knew that you misread the card.
But you waited for me to go live for it.
That's
okay,
right.
cool.
I'm waiting for you to go live. Yep, that's
unbelievable.
Right.
Yeah, well, you know what? Daydream sucks. It's a D. White Daydream is white for a sorcery. Exile target creature you control, then return that card to... Man, I even said at the beginning of the episode, you got to read the cards. Stupid.
You got to read the cards. It's true.
1 mana sorcery, exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. Flashback for 2 and a white.
Yeah, so again, not a lot of comps for sorcery speed, only target your own stuff. It's funny because I was asking for a card like this for a very long time when I was thinking, how can they give us additional versions of Cloud Shift and then what's the best in class one? The white
Ephemerate.
Instant speed Ephemerate. I was thinking, how could they iterate on that effect to give us something on Arena at a non-rare rarity that we could play with? I just don't think they're ever going to downshift Ephemerate on Arena. And something like this is what I was thinking about. Like, okay, what if we got a Cloud Shift that gave a counter? And instead of this being a Cloud Shift that gives a counter, it's a sorcery speed card that gives a counter, but also then you get the flashback. So I think that where I'm excited about this, number one, is actually in the Skyfisher space. Unlike Ennis, I don't actually know that I want to be combining Ennis with Skyfishers. I want to be playing it with like Soul Herder and then just a bunch of creatures that have ETB value attached to them. Daydream's different because it really wants keywords on your creatures because it's giving counters. So I do want to play this with my Pixies and Skyfisher itself and some Pearl Kieran because in addition to getting the value from those cards, returning whatever permanent you care about, you're getting that power on a creature with a keyword. To me, this is a card that is exciting because it's novel. I'm actually not convinced that it's going to end up playing out particularly well. One of the things that's a little bit awkward about it is that given the fact that it's a sorcery and puts a counter on your creature, et cetera, it's like you kind of want to be casting this post-combat, so it's not really giving that counter with haste. It's a slow power boost. So there's definitely some knobs on this that are turned down. But if you think about the entire output here, if you imagine that the ETB you're getting off your creature is akin to drawing a card, then this is kind of like 1 mana sorcery speed to give your creature +1/+1 and draw a card, and then also draw this Daydream into your graveyard. That kind of puts it in my mind as like better than Honor, something like that. Where it's hard to make these comparisons, but I see the vision here. I think there's enough value here certainly to test.
I think I might actually like this a little better than Innis because it's cheaper on the front end. I've mentioned before that with these sort of synergy cards, a lot of times the best thing you can do is be cheap. And like the 3 mana buyout mode on this, like how many times are we expecting to trigger Innis in a game, right? After you do it the first time? So if we assume you're not doing it again, I'm gonna maybe I give you you get 2 counters on Innis, so you got a 3/3 out of it, but it definitely took multiple turns. So the output on this could just be reasonably similar, except the front end you saved a lot of mana. 1 mana is not a lot of mana if you're able to get something akin to like draw a card or better off of it. This also can get you out from under a few specific cards. I mean, man, Unable to Scream is so good in our mainline cube, and it is just taking L's left and right in the Peasant cube.
Terrible against white and black and blue. Probably also green. Yeah, I mean, obviously the joke here with all the blink stuff too is it re-prepares your ETB prepared creatures in the retail, which matters for some of the cards we're talking about here. I like the efficiency on this. I mean, a big ephemerate stand. We don't currently have that uncommon on Arena, but it doesn't get cheaper than 1 mana without some real cost on it, and your creature comes back bigger. So yeah, I like the 4 mana option here too. You got 2 creatures in play. You're at like a kind of board stall or something. You just 4 mana, blink 2 things. They're bigger now. Get some ETB value. Sounds good to me.
Given that they keep printing these cards, I do want to mention one. We've mentioned this a few times, but like they keep printing these powerful or at least interesting, like Skyfisher-ish type cards in every set. And I do think you have a legitimate question you have to start asking yourself at a certain point of like how many of these you want, because I do think these are oftentimes, especially the Skyfishers definitely are, but these are often White's best effects. And so at a certain point, White can just become a pile of nothing but things that you want to pick up with your Skyfishers and blink with your blink spells and the blink spells, which is really boring if that's what you're doing, because that's all your section's doing.
Well, what I like about what they're doing is these cards are different. It's like, sure, Daydream is not the same as, Ennis is not the same as Personify. Daydream is not the same as, Ephemerate or Cloud Shift or whatever. They are asking different things of you. Daydream and Ennis specifically are soul herder cards. They need creatures, actual creatures that have really strong ETBs. And the Pixies and the Skyfishers don't care about that at all. So I think that's something to consider as you're building out your cube, is like, these suggest different lanes. Yes, you can play your Pixies in the same decks as your Daydreams and Ennis's, but they don't necessarily go in the same decks all the time. Oh, and one other note, these are incredible with Warp. Oh my gosh, they are so good with Warp. Because the fact that their sorcery speed doesn't matter because Warp stays into play till end of turn, whereas they're not good with Evoke because Evoke creatures leave play immediately.
Yeah, what isn't good with Warp and Peasant
Warp is
too,
just
though?
insane. Yeah, Warp is so good.
All right, last white card here is called Primary Research. It's 4 and a white for an enchantment. When it enters, return target non-land permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and on your end step, if a card left your graveyard this turn, draw a card. I have this as a D, as just like it's 5 mana. Like it's 5 mana. It's 5 mana for 3 mana value card. Barring specifically Flicker Wisp, like I don't think you're going to get paid back until you do this a second time, and that's not even guaranteed. But I will give it points for being cool and being a sweet build around and playing into that Grave Break space. Notably, does not have to get back a creature either. It can be any non-land permanent.
Yeah, I mean, I have this in C specifically for graveyard cubes, like really graveyard heavy environments where you're going to be doing this grave break thing a lot, and this is an engine. If this isn't an engine and it's just getting back like one thing that isn't Flicker Wisp, it's not very good.
Yeah, agreed. Needs to go into slow cube. I think this was the main payoff in white for grave break. The one in red is like it's like 4 mana 3/4 creature that then whenever your stuff gets grave broken, you get to make 2/2s. I think that's way worse, specifically because of the interaction this has with Flicker Wisp or your Kieran's or whatever to then potentially get more value. Though it's not as good with Kieran because you don't really want to pick this card up very often. But yeah, I think in a slower environment, this potentially has enormous value that it can provide, and that's interesting to me. But you do want to have plenty of synergy around it.
Cool build around though. I'll be drawn towards that for limited as long as Horhold isn't like complete trash. So like it was last time. All right, blue. First blue card. This is one of the more interesting cards in the set to think about. It's Fractal Anomaly. It's a single blue mana for an instant. Create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token and put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of cards you've drawn this turn. So, actually weaker if you cast it on your opponent's turn, because if you cast it on your turn, you've drawn an extra card. So the 4 here is a 1 mana 1/1. Well, the 4 is a 0/0 if you're like really bad at the game.
Yeah, like you have to misclick to make this.
Or like you.
0, right?
Like you stock up and then you cast this and you forget that like it didn't draw cards or whatever. Even then you would make a 1/1. But yeah, okay. So I mean, we all have this in C range. I don't know what a C. I got rid of all the pluses and minuses on my grades and just kind of left them in the tiers.
If there's a plus or a minus, it just means that I think it goes high or low in the tier.
Sure.
Or
yeah.
Or we think it goes high or low in the tier.
I just replaced all my pluses and minuses with like just the tier. But I mean, I've heard both ends of this story here, and to me, it seems pretty obvious that this is like a seal-in, or 4 will come up more often than seal-in card. The seal-in being like what you want to do with this is brainstorm, flash it in with make a 3/3 block a 2/2 or whatever. And that is good. That's why I didn't go full D, is because there are situations where you do that, or like you behold the unspeakable, draw into this, make a 4/4 on your turn for 1 mana. Like that's good. But you literally called out the floor of this being a 0, like a 1 mana 0/0, and on your opponent's turn the floor is. I mean, that is the 4 on your opponent's turn, and on your turn, it doesn't get that much better unless you're supplementing it with other stuff. So I don't give a lot of points to cards that absolutely have to have other things going on around them in order to be even playable, let alone like reach their maximum potential. But I can't go full D because, yeah, the brainstorm into like 1 mana 4/4, 1 mana 3/3 thing is like a real thing, or maybe a bunch of clue tokens, and you get to ambush something. So there's something there, but this is not a card I will ever advocate for. I just don't like it that much.
Yeah, this is not the kind of card I want to play, but, you know, if you've got a number of Cathartic Reunion type cards in your environment, maybe there's a space for this as like a, you know, 1 mana 3/3 4/4 plus in certain spots. I just think like you said, you're going to see the floor more often than the ceiling, but this is at least an interesting card. And again, if you can do this, like 1 mana is not a lot of mana, so if we can reliably do this, that's cool. I just don't think we're going to see that dream very often.
Yeah, the comp I had for this was Gigastorm Titan. That was the 2 mana 4/4 creature in blue, as long as you'd already cast a spell, like if it was your second spell or whatever. And I think that the problem I have with this card is, yes, it has some very specific combos, Brainstorm or Brain Surge. But the majority of the time, you're going to be playing this in a deck that has a fair amount of card draw, and usually that means it's going to be like a 1 mana 2/2 on your turn. You're going to loot with your creature, and then okay, now you've made a 1 mana 2/2. I just think that doesn't matter at all. So like you really need to be kind of comboing it with multiple cards or individual, very very specific cards, and I think that's just asking too much. I asked Fuller, one of the best cube players on the planet right now, probably the best peasant player on the planet right now, and he said it looked like garbage to him. So I'm deferring to him on this, and I think he would have it as a D probably. I'm saying there's something interesting here, so maybe we'll call it a C for now. But I can imagine never caring about this card ever.
Oh, yeah. I don't care about this card if you guys want to put it in D. I just think that it's interesting enough that we could talk about it as a C.
I want to treat it like a D, but it'll be the type of card that I get ambushed by. It's like a random 4/4 or something. Sure, you got me with the ceiling of the card. You got me. 1/2 for 1 and a blue elf wizard. It has Opus. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card. Then discard a card unless 5 or more mana was spent to cast that spell. And I don't know if I explicitly stated this with Opus or not, but it's not mana value 5, it's the amount of mana that you spent on the spell. So
much
some
worse.
flashback things.
So much worse.
It is actually worse. It's like the reverse Final Fantasy thing, but
no, that's how Final Fantasy worked, right? Is you had to spend X amount, you had to spend 4 mana.
That was a spending one too.
What am I thinking?
But it's only 4. But there's a lot of things that, I mean, like Superior Foes, for instance, cares
that's
about
what
mana
I'm
value. Beanstalk cares about mana value.
So this is how we're triggering our fractal anomaly, right? This is how we're getting nice and big.
Exactly. There you go. Yeah. I like this card a lot in the context of like spell slingers. Like if you are a spell slinging cube, there's not a lot of 2 mana engine cards. We talked about this with Lita in the TMT review. Like 2 mana engines, you should be sitting up in your chair to a degree. This one, even if it doesn't ever draw cards, which I assume in a spellslinger space, it's going to have access to actually drawing without discarding. But even if it's just looting, we still don't have access to an engine looting creature like this in the history of the game at 2 mana. The only thing I could find was there's like Wind Rider, Wizard, something like that from I want to say ZNR. It was a Windrake version of this effect that also triggered on Wizards being cast. But for 2 mana, and 2 mana is way better than 3 mana, especially on a card like this. There's nothing in the history of the game that I could find that this compared to. So I think if you're spell slinging, then this makes sense a lot to me, especially because it gives you some crossover synergy with your Mystics and your Messengers and your Sky Rays and your Makos, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it seems like a really solid card if you're spell slinging.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how often this is going to be better than something like Merfolk Looter, which, this is definitely has the potential to be better, right? You can do it multiple times per turn. You can draw a card without discarding. You can block with it. Yeah, block a 1/1. So it's probably got enough better that you would want to run that over, but this doesn't excite me. I think it's a cool card, and you're right, there aren't a lot of these cheap engine cards. It just doesn't really excite me. This isn't the kind of card I enjoy casting.
Well, we don't play Spellslinger, so we definitely, I don't think, are running this card. But I think if that's a big part of your environment, low token generation, et cetera, then this card makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, if you have a lot of things to spend 5 mana on, whether that be expensive spells or cards with flashback, that you can hit this.
For
Cube specifically, the spending mana might be something that's kind of interesting, just because that's going to open up flashback spells that a lot of these other cards may not. But
well, it works with X spells too. I think X spells is kind of the joke.
X spells, sure.
With this to a degree. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, there's some Quandrix and Prismari crossover there again, like we had in the original Strixhaven. I almost want to even give this a D. I really don't think this is something I would advocate for very much. It's just almost irrelevant in combat against everything but 1/1s, and I don't know. It's got like Snarling Gorehound vibes to me of like you're doing the thing.
Don't
but
make
you're paying
that
twice as much mana.
Snarling Gorehound's awesome.
Yeah, but you're doing the
Why
you're
is that
doing the
comp
thing,
you're
and
going
because it's comparable to that card. But yeah, I don't know. This
If
doesn't.
you're trying to sell me on a card, go for that. But this,
No, I think it doesn't excite us because we just are not in environments where you're going to build a deck anymore, at least, where you're building a deck with 15 to 18 spells. But I think that like there are cubes where that exists, and then in my mind, this card's insane in those spots.
Which is something we could say of a lot of cards that we ended up cutting from this as well. Which is to not repeat that line so many times, we cut a lot of the. This is only good in instant and sorcery cubes or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, Orisa Tide Choreographer. This is 4 and a blue for a 2/2 legendary Merfolk Bard. It costs 3 less to cast if you control creatures with a total toughness of 10 or greater. And when it enters, you draw 2 cards. So 5 mana 2/2 draw 2, or 2 mana 2/2 draw 2 if you have 10 toughness on board already. I don't think that this doesn't seem to play into any themes of the set. It just seems like a kind of random creature, but
there's a 2-card combo in the set.
I guess increment is the joke here.
Kind of. There's also a green fight spell or bite spell that gives a creature +0/+10, so you can like combo that into this.
Okay, I can discard a card to draw 2 cards. Basically, I guess you said it's a bite spell, so okay.
It's a bite. It's a bite spell, I think, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Which is that's cute. That's cute.
okay, look at this art and tell me this creature is not flying.
Yeah. Wait.
I know, so depressed.
Well, because it's so clearly like, hey, Mold Drifter, but
Like we're hanging out above the water. How are we doing this?
we all have it ranked as C. Like this to me does not scream. You do not. It does not demand to be played, to use your terminology.
No.
But I think if you did play it, it's probably fine. I mean, you probably want to support it with all the crabs, right? You've got your Hard Evidence, you've got your 0/5 crab on 2. I'm sure there's some crab you could play on 3. You could just crab it up.
You're playing what's that white planeswalker that cares about butt size? Like you're playing that from
Teo, yeah.
And the white green one does too, I think.
Watley, yeah.
Yeah, maybe you just got a little like white blue or bant butts archetype in your cube. I think this is pretty niche. I think we could have called this a D. I'm interested. Not really, but I like the fact that it draws 2 cards on a creature. There's not a lot of creatures in the history of the game that do that below like 6 mana or whatever. So, it's something, but I just imagine that you're turning it. I mean, when you turn it on, oh my gosh, it's going to feel incredible.
It is good, yeah.
I can't imagine that you're doing that with a ton of consistency. So again, slower cube, especially if you have some sort of a synergy around toughness, which is hard to do in PES right now, then I think it's insane. But I think in the majority of cubes, it's not gonna be great.
Yeah, I think that's probably sufficient on that one. No flying. I don't think flying would even change my opinion of the card very much, personally. But
probably not.
All right, Divergent Equation. This is XX blue for an instant. Return up to X target instant and or sorcery cards from your graveyard to your hand, and exile this card. Exile the Divergent Equation. Say the line.
Well, okay, so yes, obviously you're playing this in your Spellslinger cubes, and just a quick note here, again, not a card with comps. We do not get return spell effects that are on instants, like ever. I think this might be the first one that I saw below rare. We also don't get the ability to return multiple spells very often. We have Bond of Insight, Pull from the Deep. These can get 2. Pull from the Deep has to get an instant and a sorcery. Specifically, you can't get 2 of the same type. Bond of Insight, like mills first, and then you can return 2 things. That costs 4 mana, but it's a sorcery. I think that this card is actually potentially a really strong draw spell in a deck that has a lot of instants and sorceries. It has some flexibility to it. You can cast it for 5, potentially to trigger 5, your 5's mana value matters stuff. But I think it just suggests an archetype. It really does. And I don't want people to think that that's an archetype in my cube. So I'm not going to be running this card, but I do think it's actually possibly pretty powerful. So in a Spellslinger cube, obviously, but I even think in a cube that like isn't really hard on spell slinging as a thing going on, but it's just that's like a thing you can do. I think this could be a fine card to include because you don't need to be playing this with 10 instants or sorceries to make this great. Like with 5, with 6, with 7, it's going to be, I imagine, a really strong card in the late game. So I don't know. I see the power here. It's novel. We've never seen something like this before. So, but I don't think I'm going to be playing with it right now.
Yeah, I don't like that it suggests like a spells deck if you're not really committed to it. But yeah, I mean, the scaling on this is such that, like, you know, if you pay us for 5 mana, you get back 2 spells. That's not bad at instant speed, considering that's like drawing 2 with selection. And at 7, we get 3, and now we're approaching like game-winning amounts of card advantage territory. Especially if you're playing. Sorry, go ahead.
At 7, you've won any sort of game that you're not just dead the turn you cast this. The game is over. My mind immediately goes to 5, but you can scale down to 3 to just turn this into the best instant sorcery in your graveyard, and that's interesting for an instant. You wouldn't really expect this on an instant. I do think what you said is true, though. The danger of like having this in a cube where you don't necessarily need to go hard on instants and sorceries, but somebody who is not familiar with the cube sees this and suddenly they're like, okay, I'm going to go into is it spells or whatever.
This is a potentially cool payoff if you're running a lot of cards like Bleeding Edge or Toll of the Invasion that are, not specifically Toll of the Invasion because they'll be hellbent probably by the time this comes up, but cards that are spells that do a thing, right? The more of those you're running that you can pick up and impact the board with your card draw spell after you cast it, those are really big. The 2-for-1 board impacting especially.
Cool shout out there. There's another very it's a very different card, but has a lot of the same subtext here. That's Flow State, 1 in a blue for a sorcery at uncommon. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom in any order. If there's an instant card and a sorcery card in your graveyard, instead put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom. I think a lot of people missed that and there on first read.
I think that and also turns this into a much, much bigger ask than even reading the card people are giving credit to. Like, getting a sorcery and an instant into your graveyard if you're not running a heavy spells theme is not trivial. It's arguably not even easy. I've played plenty of decks where I've got 2-3 instants, 2-3 sorceries, and at what point are you expecting to get this turned on? In addition, it's incredibly disrupted by graveyard hate, of which there's an increasingly large amount of just incidental graveyard hate at Peasant. I think this is a lot harder to trigger, and this really is we got to have some spell slinger decks going on. You can't just insert this into your average space and expect it to do anything. I don't think.
Totally, I would really want spell slinger plus self mill as themes in my environment. But if in the environment that this goes in, it's like a cheap stock up or whatever. It's I think it is a very powerful card when you turn it on. But I agree with y'all. Very non-trivial to turn this on. You got to really mean it. And
it's actively kind of weak if you don't turn it on. It's not like it's not like it makes up for it. Sorcery speed, anticipate. So, cool card. People comparing it to expressive iteration, but I think gotta fully read the text. Lesson learned.
Is this another set without any clearly playable blue cards?
Yes, correct.
So black.
We've had some really good blue ones lately, though, with all the bounce creatures. We've gotten a lot. So.
That is true.
There was another Mana War in this set.
I was going to say.
So much worse than all the others.
If I remember right in the last review, we slept a little on Surveillance Cam, and that card ended up being pretty good.
Yeah, I still don't know if it's good for us, but yeah, we could have talked about that one. Sure.
We're testing it, but I don't know if I've seen it yet. What's the extra text on the Mana War in this set? It becomes unblockable somehow?
You play an X spell, it becomes unblockable. Which is
so it doesn't have extra text. Okay, cool.
No. Yep.
All right, so
if
first
you
black
fire
card.
foes your opponent, then your creature gets unblockable.
No, hold on. You time our stand it, and then it becomes unblockable to fireball their face.
Or I'm firing off what is it? Divergent equation for x = 0. Does that even work?
Right. That's right. I don't know.
Okay, moving into black. Lecturing Scorn Mage. This is black for a 1/1 human warlock at uncommon. It has repartee. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery that targets a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. I'll say I really like this card. I think this card is really slick, and even as a non-constructed player, it raises the constructed, 1-drop alarms for me. It had. I mean, we already talked about a repartee card. That's not free. It's just not free, especially when you're running a lot of your interaction in the form of instant artifacts and enchantments and stuff like that. It is really cool if you have enough ways to trigger repartee and you have it early enough in the game, combat tricks or removal spells both do the trick, and they don't even have to target. Like, your combat tricks can go elsewhere, and this can get bigger, which I think is really cool as well. So slick card, I don't think Repartee is like a free roll unless you're going after it.
I think this is a really cool card, but the comp I actually want to give is Heartfire Hero, which is a card that I think is clearly way better than this, because it's easier to trigger off the top. Like, this card doesn't do anything a lot of times off the top, whereas Heartfire, if you got like a Glimmerlight or a Barbed Fist or something in play, you can just, target it and get it scaled up over a turn or two. And it's much better when it dies. And that card is still only okay in Cube. Like, it's harder to enable that than you would expect. And this is a substantial jump up in terms of how hard it is to enable. Much worse off the top as well. So, like, compared to some of the other comps on here, like Saz's Chocobo, you have one fetch land, or you just play the game some more, and a lot of times a Chocobo off the top can still end up being a 2/2/3/3. You kind of need a lot of things going right. You in your mind, you're probably thinking like, all right, I'm gonna play this on one every single game. We're gonna play some Doomblades. This is gonna scale up. It's gonna be great. But like, even the Doomblades, a lot of them are no longer even instants and sorceries, and those are kind of the things that I think that a card like this in a cube sense signals that you want to be doing with it. So I think this card's more cool than good, is my point, I guess. But it is neat.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely being really bad off the top, kind of no matter what, or being not impressive off the top is a huge problem for the card. I think on one, it's a very exciting card. The biggest issue that I have with it, the reason why I'm not going to play it, is what you said there, where like too many of my Doomblades, too much of the good black removal now is not instants or sorceries. Mm-hmm. Almost all of the 2-for-1 removal are not instants and sorceries, like Foul Play, Bleeding Edge. You can play those that would trigger this, but I think you have to have some specific stuff going on in your cube to want this. But if you are spell slinging, you're probably going to be playing with those cards, not with the the Witch's Vanities instead. And you're probably also there's a chance you're doing heroic stuff. And when you have both of those intersecting, then this card gets, in my mind, really exciting when you can play this in your black-red deck with Monstrous Rage, where also all your red target removal turns this on.
Yeah.
You could potentially play this in black-white with a couple of the gold cards we're going to talk about later. I think it starts to get really exciting as a one-drop. And I think it's wrong to think of Repartee. You already covered this, but it's wrong to think of Repartee as like heroic plus. It's like Repartee is just a thing. It is, I think, a mechanic that if you build around it, it's just happening as the game progresses. No matter what you're doing, you don't have to fill your deck with a bunch of targeted spells with a bunch of honors or whatever to turn the card on. But yes, if you do have honors in your environment, it gets way better because you can cast your honor or your monstrous rage or whatever on your other creature, and then this also gets bigger. And now you have like 2-for-1 potential opportunities that are opening up thanks to the Repartee trigger. So I think the card for 1 mana is exciting. It's just not for our cubes right now. I could imagine cubes where it is exciting for, though.
If you're a Subtle Strike, like you mentioned this with Honor, but if you're a Subtle Strike Skullduggery gamer, this is also pretty exciting.
Yeah, though notably it doesn't trigger multiple times off multiple targets, once per spell, unfortunately. Sure. But minor complaint here. The Commander Precon, the Orzhov Commander Precon is all about auras and enchantments and putting auras on your opponent's creatures, and has nothing to do with targeting things with instants and sorceries. There's such a disconnect there that makes me think, like, could Repartee have included auras? And been like, obviously it's the instant sorcery set, it's not the aura set, but like, I'd be so much more interested if you could like pacifism your opponent's creature, trigger Repartee, or Shelter by Ghost, trigger Repartee. Or
it's weird because
it's a little bit of a bummer.
Don't the other commander decks all kind of work with the themes that the color pair does? Like, Warhol still cares about Gravebreak, right?
Yeah.
The black green deck still cares about Pests.
Well, okay, but except here. Sorry. Teld extended the conversation, so I'm going to extend the conversation. The pests in the Witherbloom Commander deck are the old pests. The pests in the new set trigger on attack. Rutha, the commander of the Izzet deck, cares about the mana value of spells you're casting. Opus cares about how much mana you're spending to cast your spell. So Treasure Cruise is really good in the precon, but really bad with there's like a whole.
That's all that matters. Okay, it's just they rhyme. That's good enough. Close
enough.
Okay,
so
whole
like
disconnect.
So what you're saying is that these were just developed by entirely different teams, apparently.
Two different teams who really knew what they wanted for Warhold specifically, because they nailed Warhold. and to give them credit,
they did not
to give them credit.
Anyway.
Warhold is like the coolest thing going on in this set because it's doing something different. Anyway, just a small tweak that I would have loved to see Auras trigger this.
Sure.
Okay, Leech Collector. This is 1 in a black for a 2/2 human warlock. Whenever you gain life for the first time each turn, it becomes prepared, and then it has its prepared spell is Bloodletting, which is a sorcery for black. Each opponent loses 2 life. Notably, does not enter the battlefield prepared. I haven't thought about this one as long as I thought about some of the others, but I also assumed this one entered the battlefield prepared. It does not. So you have to get some sort of life gain going before you can even get that first Bloodletting.
This is another card that was really difficult to come up with comps for. There's not really a whole lot of peasant creatures at 2 mana that potentially can just turn after turn drain your opponent for 2 life for 1 mana. Yes, you have to have this getting re-triggered, having the prepare trigger continuously happening over and over again. So we're already talking about a cube that has a clear life gain theme, which is a theme that none of us like all that much. I'm playing with like 3 or 4 Soul Sisters right now, and I don't think that's near enough to make this card playable, because they see this card, they just kill your Soul Sister, and suddenly this gets a lot less exciting. This does, though, turn on with Lifelink as well, which some of the cards we're going to talk about, or that we could have talked about, don't really work with life gain creatures as much, or Lifelink creatures. The thing that kind of has me off this, I had it as a C and I moved it to D, is I was comparing it with Syndic of Tithes and Basilica's Creature. These are 2 drops from Ravnica, Return to Ravnica, maybe Guilds of Ravnica, I don't remember, but they had Extort on them. And so you imagine Syndic of Tithes, that's just a bear with Extort. Compare that to Leech Collector, and I feel like Syndic clears it quite easily, and Syndic of Tithes is not a card I've really thought about at all in a long time. So that tells me that you really got to care about all the parts of the Buffalo here, the fact that you're casting a spell. So we're thinking about a cube environment that is similar to the retail environment, where we have both life gain and Spellslinger as things that we care about. And even there, I can't imagine it's all that impressive as a 2-mana 2/2 in a world where we're getting huge creatures now for 2 mana. So I think in the end it's a D, but it kind of sparked joy for me at the beginning when I read it.
Yeah.
But I think in the end it's just too weak.
Yeah, I haven't really readjusted my grade on that, and I kind of feel similar. I think the comparison to Syndic and Basilica Screecher are both they're both good, other than the fact that this is clearly more aggressively slanted. It's more because the damage is doubled, the output's doubled, which is nice. There's a couple of examples of doubling the output of previous templates that I think changes the math on them a little bit. But I don't think this card is good or anything. But it did, like you said, it sparked joy when you first read it, and I think that's enough to at least talk about it.
Mm-hmm. It's good with Basilica Screecher.
That's right. Hell yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Also weird that it can become prepared on your opponent's turn, but the spell that it has is a sorcery, so a little bit strange there. All right, next up.
The one that people freaked out about, got super excited on?
I know there was some conversation surrounding this one. So Arneen, Deathbloom Botanist, is 2 in a black for a 2/2 legendary vampire druid with Death Touch. Whenever a creature you control with power or toughness 1 or less dies, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. I assume Pest Token is the name of the game there. Or no, the Inklings are also 1/1s.
Can I sell you on can I sell you on Eldrazi Spawn?
Hey.
I mean, I'm C trending towards B, but cautious enough on. We talked about it in an episode that actually isn't going to go to air, that we'll have to re-record. But this 3-mana aristocratic template, I'm always cautious of it these days, because I don't think the strategy that this card excels in is very good. But this card excels in that strategy, so. Does that balance out to a C for me? Probably. This reminds me a little bit, Teld, of what is it, Vran? Mm-hmm. The 2-mana 2/2 that drains 2 once per turn when a creature dies. It is good, but this is obviously 3 mana. Death Touch is not nothing. The comparison to Voidborn, Albed, Salvagers, which we've talked about a little bit. I think there's something here. I would say it gets close to B without being a B for me, because I don't know if people should be trying to push the Aristocrats decks like this.
This card is a little weird to me in that when you double the output on a card like this, you go from kind of being an annoyance that you're going to have to get a number of creatures dead to something that's a legitimate win condition potentially. And the thought of this card with cards like Spawn Gang Commander, with cards like Glimpse the Impossible? Is that the name of it? The thing that makes 3 Eldrazi
yes.
spawn?
Yeah.
Like, I know this is like straight up combo territory, but I mean, we've seen these Eldrazi spawn and tiny creature things be good. We've seen Weaponize be really good with like these small creature plans. Like, this is an amplifier for that, but it's a lot of amplifier. If they don't have a removal spell for it, like, it does. Sometimes this is going to resolve and just instantly you're going to get like 3
have a
triggers.
removal spell.
But they do.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And especially in these decks, it's like, of course, all of the removal that these decks have are going to go at these kinds of creatures because all the rest of your stuff is your fodder, your reassembling skeleton if you're playing that stuff. So it's like, sure, if you're playing an environment right now where you have Blood Artist and Blood Artist in your mind is performing, then sure, yeah, play this card. And I think you're right to earmark this for a future world where we have more tokens that sacrifice themselves. The biggest difference between this and Weaponize is Weaponize acts as the damage dealer and the sacrifice outlet.
Sure.
This isn't both. This needs the outlet and itself in play and then your other stuff to sacrifice. And it's just too much to ask unless your cube is particularly slow, particularly low removal, then sure, I can see this happening. But just compare this card with Vampire Spawn. Vampire Spawn, the body's not that different, 2/2 Death Touch versus 2/3, and that just gives you that drain right up front. And yeah, this has more promise, it has more potential in a world where your opponent doesn't ever get to remove this, or you already have a bunch of spawns in play to sacrifice to it immediately. So I think it's worth earmarking this card for that future environment, or for folks who like Blood Artist and are playing it now and think it's good, go for it. This is probably better.
Yeah, I do think earmarking this is important because, like, I've mentioned before that part of the only time Blood Artists get really scary is when you layer multiple of them on top of each other and you can attack, because then like the damage piles up so quickly. So yeah, this one just kind of does that for you. I don't think, again, I'm never going to be super high on these cards. I haven't rated it as a C, but this is a C with a lot of promise, I think. Like, of the Blood Artists we've seen recently, this is the one that I kind of raised my eyebrow because it was like, okay, well, with Eldrazi with Spawn Game Commander, we are cooking at this point.
Well, but one thing to call out, like one of the reasons why we gave this a C is because we did have the recorded but unreleased Black 3-Drops episode that we'll have to redo it at some later time. But Albert Salvagers and Cesarian Voidborn for me have been pretty big underperformers at this point. And one of the things that I liked about both those cards is, they trigger on artifacts, so you get to use them with your artifacts that can send themselves to the graveyard, like your treasure tokens, your blood tokens, et cetera, et cetera. And that just hasn't mattered. It just doesn't matter because the template itself in modern Peasant, contemporary Peasant, is just not that impressive. That's my concern.
Yeah.
There's Danielius yapping again.
Yeah. Danielius yapping again, yeah.
Sorry for yapping.
No, I'm just kidding. But Danielius, it has Death Touch.
Sorry, my bad. You're right. Hey, it's an A. I didn't read that.
Yeah.
Got to read the card.
There are cubes where this will kill people. I don't think it's a great fit for our cubes right now. Mm-hmm. Poisoner's Apprentice looks like an A+. We all have it rated as a C. It's 2 and a black for a 2/2 Orc Warlock. It has Infusion. When this creature enters, target creature an opponent controls gets -4/-4 until end of turn. If you've gained life this turn.
This is why it's important.
It's an A when it works.
Yeah, this
it's
is
an S when
important
it
to recognize
works.
why our tier list is not strictly about power. It's about cubability. It's how often is this making your cube? Is this a good fit for most cubes? No. But if this comes in, and every time it comes in, it's given something -4/-4, this thing is incredible. It's like a limited resource B+ A tier card. Like, it's super good.
This is an S if it didn't have the life gain. Like 3 mana 2/2
but it
-4/-4.
can't be an S because it's not that cubable. There's not a lot of places this is gonna fit.
Yeah, but it's got the stupid morbid vengeful pharaoh, more corrupt banshee problem where it looks you could rattle off a bunch of cards right now in both of our cubes that gain life. The problem is that's all incidental, and you cannot rely on that happening every single time. So unless you're literally supporting this with pest tokens, infusion, theme, life gain theme, like it's maybe a 50-50, and the card is horrendous when it doesn't do something. So it always has Tibble in his environment. Like this card ain't doing nothing with Tibble on board.
I'm fully prepared for this to be, best win rate black non-rare in the set or something like that.
Except how many times have we seen this and said that same exact thing about cards exactly like this, and then it's like, you draw it at the top, and it's like, I don't have a source of life.
The pest trigger on attacks now.
But this time, bro. This time for real, bro.
There's also no pests in this set.
This time it'll be different. Wait, are there no pests? I haven't looked.
There's like 3 cards that make pests.
It's like very minor part of this. Yeah, I mean, just compare this with Vengeful Rebel. I think it's just way easier to trigger Rebel. Obviously, Bleeding Edge, but it's slightly different. That's black, and it's
also when you hit the floor of Vengeful Rebel, you still get a 3/2, which is a good bit better than a 2/2.
But yeah, if Lifelink is a big thing in your cube, then this is gonna be good.
Yeah. You did mention in a DM that this does work with Soul Sisters. So,
Yes.
it's got that weird if at the end, not at the beginning or whatever. So if you play this and you target something and then it triggers life gain on the way in, it'll resolve and then you'll get the -4/-4.
Yep.
All right. Eternal Student, 3 and a black for a 4/2 zombie warlock. It has 1 and a black. Exile this card from your graveyard to make 2 1/1 white and black inkling creature tokens. I'm pretty D-ish on this one. Just because the front half is not a real card. It is good incidental value if you mill over it or discard it. But the front half is not enough, and I would want both halves of this card to actually matter before I'd go higher than D, I think.
This reminds me of that MKM card, the 1/3 flyer that dies and you can spend like 5 mana.
I was thinking that too, but I couldn't remember the name. Lookout or something?
Yeah, I don't remember the name of it either, but yeah, obviously the card that the actual part of the card we want on this one is way better. But you've got to have a ton of looting. You've got to have a bunch of mill. Like if you've got those things, and we just never have to worry about actually casting this, I could see it being a reasonable card. If you're just paying, like if this is just flashback on Lingering Souls every time you see it, that's awesome.
Yeah, Leering Onlooker is the card you're thinking about. That's a 2 mana 1/3 flyer, so way better up front, though still not that impressive. And then you can pay 4 mana to exile this to create 2 tapped.
Is it 4?
1/1 flying creatures, and these don't have to come. Yeah, these are not tapped either, which is a nice bonus.
Sure.
But to me, it's like this is just the best. I think that this is the best activated ability from the graveyard that like we have now, other than Lingering Souls, like in all of Peasant potentially for this style of thing. So that tells me if you're doing self mill, if you're doing discard madness, whatever, then this seems like a totally capable card to me now. But I'm not doing those things, so. I had it as a C, y'all had it as a D. I'm fine, doing the D on balance, but I do think that text box is relevant. It's the best that I can recall seeing.
If you have like 3 or 4 tormenting voices in your cube and your players actually draft those cards, you've got like a madness thing going on. I really could see this being a card, but like I feel like this is another one of those cards that not only do we need like a discard madness sort of shell, we also probably need some mill stuff going on for this to be for this to get there. Like,
you never want to spend 4 mana on this. You'd never want to spend 4 mana on this ever.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, next up we have this Teld ass card here. Dissection Practice. Black mana instant, uncommon. Target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Up to 1 target creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Up to 1 target creature gets -1/-1 till end of turn.
It's Skullduggery and we drain 1. How good? What do you want out of a card?
So I rated this D. You guys have it as C. My thought there, my initial thought without looking at it again was I've never cared about Skullduggery, but first things first, I believe Skullduggery locked you into having targets for both, right? And this is up to 1 on each one. So I think this is already a little bit more flexible than Skullduggery, and the life gain doesn't sway me at all much on a card I wasn't interested in, but now I'm like, should I have been interested in Skullduggery in the first place, So I think I would rate this pretty much exactly where I would rate Skullduggery, but like 1 tick to the left because it has more text on it. But now I'm second guessing like, Skullduggery actually does seem like a card I would be interested in playing for 1 mana. I would be willing to go up to C on this. Skullduggery has never interested me, but yeah, I think this has enough knobs in the right direction to make it a little more interesting.
Yeah, I think you have to earmark it. I think you need to earmark anytime a card has the ability to generate a 2-for-1 for 1 mana. And like, this isn't going to do that incredibly often, but sometimes it will. And if it does that, and we're getting a free drain on top of it, again, the drain isn't a huge benefit until it is. Drain is consistently underrated. I don't think it's a big sway, but it is a 10% life swing, right? It's a 1 point each way is a total of 2 points. That's 10% of your starting life total. And if you care about like trying to seed in some like incidental life gain type stuff, this is a way to do that without playing a truly horrendous card. You do need, however, 2 things. Firstly, is a big enough section you can include this and Shelob's Ambush, because if you're going to play a 1 mana 2-for-1 black trick spell, Shelob's Ambush is best in class. And then secondly, you also need black decks that want to attack. Like if your 2-drop section is a bunch of reassembling skeletons and like writhing grubs and things like that, I don't think you want this card. But if we're on 2-drops that are actually capable of turning sideways, I'm more interested in this.
Well, if we're on Score Mage over here, if we're on this Leech Cultivator. And I think that's one of the interesting things about this set to me. I didn't state this as clearly as I meant to. I actually think this set is pretty powerful, but it's powerful in directions that I just don't care about, and that I don't. They're not powerful enough to get me to play with life gain or with spells matters as themes. But I think a direction you could go is just saying like, okay, I'm gonna have my cube. I don't want trinkets. I don't like having to manage all the tokens and paper or whatever. And so I'm gonna have a cube that plays around a lot with Spellslinger and a lot with life gain and with heroic and blah blah blah. You can just play with a ton of the cards from the set. We're gonna have a lot of C's in this set review, and you can just play with a lot of them in your cube. And I think that practice makes a lot of, makes coherent sense with Apprentice, with Score Mage, with Collector. So you can just play with all these cards. I think it'd be totally fine. It's like, you want all parts of the Buffalo here, but if you get them, I think it's a solid card.
I feel like I mentioned this multiple times every episode, but this is why it is important to recognize our tier list is not on power. We gave Glaring Flesh Raker in the Koho section a D while talking about how it's like an A-level limited resource grade if you can cast it. It's just that it's how likely is this to make your cubes, and in the spaces we're playing, which are playing a lot of game objects, a lot of these really efficient, like scaling snowbally threats, these cards don't make as much sense. But there's like a self-contained, there's so much power in this set that has a self-contained set for a bunch of different strategies that I think is really compelling. And I love when they start adding extra text to cards that I already am kind of fond of, and it just opens up a whole new layer of synergy for them, because these are the kind of cards you need for your life gain synergy package to work, is cards that are just good cards or fine cards that now they have some life gain on them.
Sure. A couple quick notes right there. First off, are we going to question that math that Teld did, or no? Are we just going to let that slide?
You can let it slide.
Okay. Second off, cool with Thought Stalker Warlock. Just a way to easily. Yeah, the 10%. But your opponent loses one, I gain one. That's 10% of your starting life total.
Sure.
And I did double check. Skullduggery does in fact have to target both creatures, so you can fire this off on turn 1 elf, which is cool. And then I like the Locust Spray comp here because Locust Spray is just on the bonus sheet for some reason. So
wait, right. worse of this card is on the bonus sheet? Why?
It's on the bonus sheet.
You can pay 2 mana to cycle it. That means it's got options.
Wow. All right, End of the Hunt. We talked about this for the main line. Pretty excited about it there as a best in class edict or whatever you want to call it. This is 1 in a black. Uncommon sorcery. Target opponent exiles a creature or planeswalker they control with the greatest mana value among those permanents.
I love this card. I think it's very, very cool. It is not an edict. It's only an edict if they have options, and there's going to be plenty of boards where they just have no option. So this has a target, and you get to choose whether or not you want to play it and target that thing. But it gets around Ward really effectively. This is, hilarious.
Literally an edict, though. Literally an edict.
Well, no, because they exile it. They don't even sacrifice it. So it's literally not an edict. It's like it's just a new kind of
sure,
thing.
Okay, sure.
Totally.
I think it's I think it's totally different. What makes edicts so what they are in Q, which is bad, generally speaking, is that they get a choice and they play a lot of tokens and they sacrifice the token. They get no choice here. I think it's not an edict.
Well, if it just said sacrifice instead of exile, it would do the exact same thing.
Semantics at this point, but
yeah. Although this does get around your opponent's Yasharn that they've somehow conjured into play from one of their alchemy cards.
Sure. Yes. Yes.
I like this less. I like this less in Peasant. I still think it's a good card. Just to be clear, it's a totally fine card. I like it less than in our mainline cube. The most scary cards in Peasant are oftentimes not the most expensive creature in play. Like if your opponent has a Sokinza Smelter and a Restless Razorkin in play, the Smelter is usually the scarier card of the two. It's good to get rid of the Restless Razorkin. You want to do that, but the Smelter's the card that's going to kill it. I think a lot of times in Peasant, the most expensive card is just not the scariest card. It's just not the case that it's quite that consistent. Whereas in the mainline cube, it's almost always the case that the biggest mana value card is the scariest one because that's the reason it's in your deck in the first place. Few exceptions to that. Cards like Aimer, obviously, but
Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
If you are playing Planeswalkers.
Well, yeah. And one thing to note. The reason why I'm not trying to be pedantic or just argue semantics on the card, I think it does matter because I have a very negative association with those, what are they called? The sacrifice effects that we were just saying. Edicts. Jesus Louise, my brain.
I have a real negative association. Where the edict hurt.
Yeah, exactly. Where the edict hurt. I have a really negative association with edicts in Cube because Cube is so filled with tokens. Who cares who the person is doing the exiling? This could say, this could not target your opponent and just say exile a creature your opponent controls with the greatest mana value, and then we wouldn't associate that effect with an edict. I think that matters because as soon as I hear the word edict, I'm like, oh, well, that's going to be bad in Cube. This is not an edict. This is just it's a restrictive removal spell in a sense, but it's nice in that it gets around restrictions in Ward, and it forces them to exile, which can be quite relevant in Cube. So yeah, sure. I just like the card a lot. I think you're going to be able to get the card you want out of this very, very often, which makes it very different from an edict. And I think it's a reasonable removal spell for 2 mana is where I'm okay not getting card advantage out of my removal spells. I think this is going to get the creature you want often.
And worth noting, this is the same exact text on Blot Out, which is a 3 mana instant. It's just 2 mana sorcery instead. So it's not a power crept version. It's not strictly better, but it is cheaper. And that matters a lot.
Yeah, I do like that this will get a real card when your opponent has several tokens in play. I think that is the big difference here. Whether it's going to get their best card or not, it's going to usually get a card that is at least a real card.
Yeah, like Mischievous Mystic, who's made a bunch of 1/1s or whatever, you're going to get to kill the Mystic. I think,
yeah,
matters.
Sure. Okay, Rabbit Attack is the last black card here. It's 1 and a black for an instant until end of turn. Any number of target creatures you control each get +1/+0 and gain. When this creature dies, draw a card. Had not thought about this one.
You have the word any number of targets to a card, and people lose their mind.
Sure.
Most of the time, that's going to be 1. By the way, that's usually going to be 1. Sometimes 2, maybe.
Sometimes 0 for what it's worth. Right, yeah. That does make it cooler for repartee and heroic or whatever else that you care about target and stuff. I think this is a classic example of like thinking about what the card's best case could be, and I think the worst case is this is uncastable or doesn't do anything, and that's enough for me to just leave it.
Are you telling me I will always have 6 creatures in play that I can turn sideways?
It's the magical scenario where you have 6 blockers against your opponent's 6 attackers, and you trade them off, and you're up. Yeah. You Wheel of Fortune or whatever. Your opponent's board is dead. These cards don't pan out like that. Maybe you pump 1 creature, trade it off, draw a card, and it's like Blade Brand. Give a creature Death Touch, draw a card. Maybe in some situations you even get to do it on 2 creatures and draw 2, in which case, yeah, that's pretty good. I don't think the 1 creature situation is better than a D, and sometimes it's a 0 creature situation. This card has no real text and no real application in the match that you're playing, so I'm just full on D here unless you have a reason to talk me up on it.
If you have a bunch of heroic creatures in play, that's cool, but you've already mentioned the heroic repartee thing. That's literally the only... This is the kind of card that I get it. I understand the joy it sparks. I see it, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. There's definitely a ceiling here that's really neat. And I'm sure in Commander this will do something silly. I'm sure somebody will find something, creative to do with it or whatever. But, like, this is just the kind of card that I feel like, it's kind of like Plume the Forbidden, where that card reads and you're like, wow, all the things you can do, but what you actually do is you sack, like, one maybe 2 creatures and you draw some cards.
Well, and this card doesn't sacrifice. Plummetly sacrifices. Like, you need your creatures to be dying for this to matter, or for your opponent to be so incentivized to block you because you got this massive pump of +1/+0 that they have to block you. This also suggests a black go wide aggro deck. Like, usually black go wide is losing its creatures intentionally. It's like blocking or sacrificing them. So that this whole idea of like a team pump scenario, I just feel like doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, I'm with D.
Yeah, this is another sick card with Eldrazi Spawn if we somehow had a way to put a bunch of those into play. But again, Magic Christmas.
All right, let's jump into red here. Starting off with red story. Unfortunately, for a lot of cards in this set, is they're the classic, like, doesn't really work in the context of our cube. Still picked out a lot of red here though. So Thunder Drum Soloist is 1 in a red, 1/3 reach with Opus. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it deals 1 to each opponent. If you spent 5 or more mana to cast that spell, it deals 3 damage to each opponent instead. So kind of your classic. We have a word for these, like your Firebrand Archer, your Thermo Alchemist, your whatever, Shock and Sharpshooter for spells instead of creatures, which is a lot harder to do.
Yeah, if you're playing this card, you have got to have ways to hit that 5 mana thing consistently, because otherwise, why are you playing this instead of Kessig Flame Breather or Coruscation Mage or whatever, any other number of better versions of this effect?
Reach.
Sure.
I mean, reach isn't nothing. Reach isn't nothing. Right?
Reach is not nothing. You're right. I just feel like if we can't hit at least the Opus effect like once per game or twice, once at least a couple of times per night, there's not a big reason to have this in your cube.
Well, because we have cards that care about non-creature spells, and so again, it's like you're already imagining this in a cube that we're spell slinging heavily. We don't care about the non-creature line of text all that much. We, instants and sorceries is mostly what we're going to be triggering anyways, and so that's fine. But yes, I agree with you. We need to be able to hit that 5, that opus number, and I don't think that's very easy to do. Like in my cube, outside of X spells, there's like Lorien Revealed, and not a whole lot else. So, yeah, you'll know it if you like this card. I think like look at your cube, how many 5-mana or X spell instants and sorceries are you running? Do you already have a spell slinger theme? But not exciting for us.
Yeah, good upgrade over like a Thermo Alchemist. If you're on something like that, maybe an electrostatic field, whatever. There's so many of these. Living History is up next. 1 in a red enchantment. When this enchantment enters, create a 2/2 red and white spirit creature token. Whenever you attack, if a card left your graveyard this turn, target attacking creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn.
This card feels disjointed.
Yeah, one of the so this is another in the long line of enchantment 2-drop creatures, 2-for-1 creatures, or 2 objects for 1 card creatures that could start to make sense for some kind of an enchantment theme that I still don't see yet. Hopefully a set will come soon that give us some reason to do that. One of the things I like about this being in red specifically is Duskmourn gave us kind of like red-black enchantment sacrifice stuff, including the gold card that was so incredibly powerful. So that gives red specifically a reason to be playing with cards like this. And then, yeah, I think red has access to a fair amount of flashback that's going to work with this card. And, I think if you can trigger it, like +2/+0 on a creature, that's not nothing. So, but yeah, I think you just got to mean it. You got to be using all parts of this card to.
Man, it would be really sick if in the limited set we could flashback Lava Dart out of our graveyard in order to give our creature plus stats, huh?
We have a card coming up that'll
we have a Lava Dart-ish card.
But
it's not Lava Dart though.
It's not Lava Dart.
All right, Charging Strife Knight is 2 in a red for a 3/3 Spirit Knight with haste and tap, discard a card, draw a card. Another very smooth Magic the Gathering design here. I actually really love this. 3-mana 3/3 haste is good, especially when it's not double. It's not like literal Hulk Bugbear or something like that. And the deck that wants this is also the deck that in the late game probably needs the Rummagen the most to kind of get in, find the pressure to get in the last little bit of damage. So it is competing with what is it called? The Samurai's Katana as 3-mana 3/3 haste.
It's not competing, but
sure, whatever. You know what I mean. They have the same stat line.
Sure.
You know what I mean. They're different cards, obviously, but they have the same stat. They have the same immediate board presence. So yes, they're competing.
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, if okay, semantics again. If you're holding both of these cards in your hand, they have the same effect. You have to choose one, right? That's competition.
Well, unless you have like a Michiko's Rain of Truth in your hand, then they're not.
Or your opponent has blockers, so you need the trample.
Or if you have a card that cares about token making in your hand, yeah.
Or they have Phoenix down on the battlefield and they can exile a spirit token.
Exactly. Yeah.
Card's good, right? Like, I mean, card is good.
We have it in A for a reason. I like the design of this card a lot. First of all, I know there's a lot of people who do really like their simple clean text boxes. The problem with simple clean text boxes, a lot of times those are weaker cards, and I feel like this is a nice example of how they can do this without really gimping on the power.
Shieldred the Apocalypse has a simple clean text box.
It sure does. But yeah, like if we can turn this sideways, we want to be doing that. And then the spots where we can't, I really like this because we're, like you said, it finds us gas. We can like try to upgrade our hand a little bit. We can hold it back as a blocker to buy some time to try to find a Wefstalker Ardent or a heart a club or something like that. Yeah, just a really slick design on a great rate. Like we still don't have a huge number of 2 in a red for a 3/3 haste. There's not a lot of those. So
two of those. This is number 2, the second ever after Katana. That you just can't ignore that rate. Got to test it. Maybe it ends up not being impressive, but got to test it.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if we're going to see that more in the future because we have a lot of 1 red 3/3 haste, and those are not good. All right, Mika. Maybe Micah. Mika, Reader of Ruins, is 3 in a red for a 4/4 legendary human artificer. It has ward, pay 3 life, and whenever you cast instant or sorcery spell, you may sacrifice an artifact. If you do, copy that spell and choose new targets for the copy.
This is like a 2017 rare.
Maybe a 2019 rare even. Like I don't know.
It's
anything before Wilds of Eldraine, I'll take.
It's cool. Yeah. It is a very.
Or not Wilds of Eldraine. First Eldraine. Excuse me.
Well, yeah, there you go.
It's intriguing for an uncommon, especially if you look at the limited set. There's almost no artifacts that you actively want to sacrifice, and very little artifact generation. through treasures and stuff. So it's weird that like this is in the set, but Teld, I think you said it, like this is a cool like way to bridge a gap between spells, matters, and non-creature artifact creation and stuff like that.
I just want to copy a Choco comment or a Heartfire. I keep trying to call it Heartfire Club. There's a card called Heartfire that does something similar to Improvise Club.
It is, yeah. Improvise Club. I mean, that's my dream, right? Is a I guess you're sacking 2 artifacts at that point or whatever and dealing 8
8
to your opponent. Yeah, it's a lot. And
I'd be okay copying a Fearfire Foes too. That seems fine.
because the first one didn't kill your opponent's board.
Or Tyvar Stand, or trash the town, or
My point being, this card is good if it works. Assuming you're even set up to use it though, like a cube that has density of instants and sorceries and artifacts, which I would say ours is set up. I mean, we'll be able to use this more often than not. It's still a 4-mana 4/4 you have to untap with.
Or you just treat it as a 5-drop.
Yeah, with specific 1-drop, but then you still, that's still like additional setup. You have to have a 1-mana spell and an artifact in play.
And I did mention Choco Comet and Improvise Club, partly because those cards are fantastic, but also partly because I think this card, a lot of people are going to read it like a value card, and I feel like this is a card that is almost exclusively good for pushing damage, because like when you combine it's not great on curve, right? Like 4/4 for 4 is like below rate, but it has ward pay 3 life, and so if you're just trying to value your opponent, that doesn't matter. But if you're able to apply some pressure, and then this is like our damage amplifier to potentially get over the hump with some of our late game stuff, I like it better. It's really compelling. I think it's a really cool card.
Yeah, some cards to think about with this would be Spider Manifestation, because this you cast this off the Spider Manifestation and untaps that, gives you mana immediately to then cast your spell. Instants and sorceries that make artifacts, so Shelob's Ambush we mentioned, that's not the best thing to copy, but maybe Deadly Dispute, Fanatical Offering. There's like I don't know, 15 or so instants or sorceries in my environment that make artifacts that now you have like some crossover synergy happening there. I think that the thing that's exciting about this is there's just so few creatures in the history of Magic at Peasant that are like reasonable-ish creatures on rate. This isn't that reasonable, but it's not like totally embarrassing. It's not Rutha that have the ability to copy instants or sorceries. Like we have plenty of forks in the history of the game, but very few creatures that can then copy your instants and sorceries, and that's exciting. And this is an engine; you can do it multiple times potentially. Yeah. So
does it take extra mana too? That's a
doesn't take extra mana.
Almost all the other ones do.
So a lot of things are really exciting about this. That's why I say, to me, this feels like a rare from not that long ago. But there's still the big but there of like, you just play this and they kill it, or you play this and you have the artifact in play but you don't have the instant or sorcery in your hand, or you have the instant or sorcery in your hand but you don't have the artifact. And in all these scenarios, it's awful. It's truly awful. So I don't know. I might test it just because it's so novel. It's a very bizarre card, but I don't know yet what to think about it.
I would almost go like low B on it, just because there's a dream to it and stuff. And the ward does carry some weight there. Without ward, I would buy the it dies and it's just done. But I mean, ward pay 3 life is like a chunk. That's a real chunk, So it either probably untap to do a thing with it, or dies right away and gets some value on the way out. So it's not completely just kill it and gone.
I mean, you do kind of have to be in a somewhat specific space where we got instants and sorceries worth casting and trinket artifacts to sack, but like it's really not that hard to see that coming up. I mean, there's some very, very good red spells that you want to put in every red deck.
Well, how many spells do you want in your deck before you're running this? Because I was trying to think about this. Like, is 3 enough? I don't think so. I think you want at least like 5.
Like 5, yeah.
And already, I think that's not. And I think that's already not easy to do in our environments. You can do it, but I think you got to really kind of draft around it in that case, and then that makes it harder then to get the artifacts in your deck to sack to this. So I don't think it's actually that easy to do.
I hear you, but I also keep hearing copy Monstrous Rage in my head. And like, that's
sack Experimental Synthesizer, hit Monstrous Rage off Experimental Synthesizer. Yeah. I guess it doesn't work that way, but there's. I think that I'm gonna revise my grade to like low B, because I think it just kind of works if it doesn't die. But there are enough things pushing against it, so I'm gonna go high B or low B on it.
I'm going to say it's C, but I think it's definitely like a super compelling C. I just don't. I think, like Danelia said, the conditions to get it to be good, I think, are harder to do than you're imagining.
Like, this is like a C that might demand to be tested, I guess, at least in our environments. I think it makes the most sense in our environments potentially to run, but we'll have to see.
Okay, similar line of creatures here. Pigment Wrangler is 4 and a red for a 4/4 flying, enters prepared, and the prepared spell is Striking Palette for red. It's a sorcery that says when you next cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy it and choose new
Wait,
targets.
this
for
one
the
does
copy.
fly. Why does the blue one
does
not fly? And this one flies. What? Okay, actually, okay, this card is actually way better than I thought it was because it flies, but that's not enough to change my grade, just that I didn't know it flied.
Air Elemental that you can then pay a red to copy your next instant or sorcery.
Yeah, air elementals have had quite the glow up over the last 15 years, I suppose. But I think the again, what makes this exciting, similar to the last card, not very many cards in the history of the game that are creatures that are not utterly embarrassing on rate that can then copy your spells. This one, it's pretty hard to do more than one time. I guess it's possible, but it's also, relatively easy to do it that first time, as long as you untap with this after you cast it on 5. This is like one of those scenarios where your dragon lives, you're usually happy. This one's like you're even more happy if it lives, and even more sad, I guess, if it dies. So, I don't know, not the kind of card for me, like expensive card without an ETB. It's relatively small for its mana cost. You really got to untap with it to be happy. Not the kind of card I like, but if you're in a slow environment, your removal's not amazing, I can definitely see this being a really great card.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a weird that we have both of these effects in the same set.
It is a little strange. I mean, it makes sense, I guess, for casting big spells and stuff. I can't. Yeah, we don't see double copy spells very often in the same set. Both at uncommon in the same color too. Interesting. Yeah, I have no interest in playing this card, but I'll give you the credit that it's something. It's definitely playing new space here to see these copy effects on creatures.
Interested for sure, but I mean, the not having word pay 3 life is a lot harder of an ask. Like, if they just deal 4 to this or whatever, you're pretty sad. If they just,
and you can do that for 2 mana. You can do it for 1 mana in some cases. Like, man, that's such a bummer if that happens.
All right, a couple spells here. We've got Dual Tactics. This is red for a sorcery, deals 1 damage to target creature. It can't block this turn, and it has flashback for 1 and a red.
This is why we didn't get Lava Dart.
This is exactly why.
F tier. I wanted Lava Dart.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's nice about this, Repartee cares a lot about the number of instants and sorceries you're casting, not the amount of targets that you have. And that specifically works really nicely with flashback removal spells. And there's actually not that many flashback removal spells in the history of the game. You brought up Flame Jab. There's like the shock that you can flashback for 5. But there's really not that many. I don't know that this is good enough to get there, but sure, if you're in a Repartee space and a Spellslinger space, especially if you have some amount of self mill, I can imagine certainly a cube that's playing around in enough of these synergies that this makes sense. I don't think that the unable to block line of text here is enough to get me excited, even though yes, theoretically you could go like 3 mana, kill an X1, have their larger creature unable to block, get in there. That doesn't do enough for me, again, unless you're playing around with a lot of these particular themes.
Yeah, and that's exactly why that is the exact reason I have this letter grade higher and would say that this feels like a B to me. Is we know Pinger's good, we know Double Ping is good. Even I wasn't even thinking Repartee or Targeting or anything here. I just think Pingin is good, and then the kind of like quote unquote hidden mode of take 2 blockers out or take out a X1 and take another blocker out is just really good.
This has got a way worse floor than a lot of these cards, though. I mean, it's like when Playful Shove is bad, it still cycles. You still draw a card. But like if you draw another Playful Shove and that Playful Shove doesn't do anything, because that's what the flashback functionally does, you're pretty disappointed. Though I guess like the flip side of that is sometimes you kill 2 1 toughness creatures that matter. So this card
kill a 1 toughness creature and get their 4/4 out of the way for the turn and bash them. Like I think that's pretty. Like it's not just ping. It's ping and remove a blocker for the turn.
That sounds really cool until your opponent puts one of their 17 Eldrazi spawn in front of it.
Well, to me, Tim, this versus Boulder Dash, I just think it's just hard. The comparison is not great for this card, again, unless you care about the fact that you're getting 2 triggers, you're targeting things twice, whatever. Then in this card, that makes this card exciting. But without that, I feel like Boulder Dash just clears it pretty easily. But the only way that's not the case is if the falter text on this really matters, and I just have a hard time imagining it does.
I think Boulder Dash I think is a better card. I'll give you that. But I don't know, dude. Have you ever played a game where your opponent has a 3/3 in play? Boulder Dash does nothing against that. So
but then
I
this doesn't really do anything against that either. It's like you gotta be attacking and you gotta be able to, I don't know.
Why aren't you attacking? Don't you guys like attacking? I'm surprised you guys think that the unblockable text is like nothing here.
Well, no, I do like attacking, but to me, this is not the kind of card that I want to be playing with to encourage my attacking. This is like an all-in aggro card. What I want is more Monstrous Rages, where it's like, my Monstrous Rage is just going to work. It's just going to do a lot of damage. It's just going to be good no matter what. This card needs specific situations to be great, and it's not. But I want to be clear. I agree.
I'll give you that.
I don't think the card is bad. I definitely don't think the card is bad. It is the template of a kind of cards that I like. I think I just like those cards more. That's why I'm saying this is a C. But again, if you're playing around with these particular themes, then it gets boosted.
Yeah, I'm not even super into cards like Neighborhood Guardian that are kind of these all-in aggressive-y type cards that probably push more damage than this on average. Not super into it. I mean, this card's fine. Like you said, if it regularly stopping like the only creature that's good at blocking from blocking and killing something else on the way, that's good. I just don't know how often we're gonna hit that.
I would like to test this and see where it lands is where I'm at with it, because you guys named a bunch of cards that, I agree are better than this, but I think there are situations where this is like, oh man, this card could win me the game here, or the downside of like kill Rosy Cotton, kill another X1, or for 3 mana is fine, kill Rosy Cotton plus kill, temporarily take offline the, kill Mighty Mutanimals plus take off the thing that it grew. I think those are all good lines, but you're absolutely correct to call out like a bunch of cards that, they're better than this on average. I think this is I think this will be a sneaky good card for aggressive decks, but we'll see. It's going to take some testing because it's not obvious that it's good. Last card's a lot less interesting to talk about. It's Impractical Joke. It's red for a sorcery. Damage can't be prevented this turn, and it deals 3 damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. So Strangle up to 1 is a little bit weird, but Strangle with the throwaway damage prevention line that matters 5% of the time or less.
Does it matter? I can't even figure out why would that matter.
It won't matter. The only reason I think it would ever matter is if you're in some really like people playing with protection or fogs or stuff like that.
But protection it still doesn't work, right? Because you can't target the creature if it's got protection from red.
No, but you could like if people play with Cerulean Drake and stuff like that, like you could attack through it with your red creatures now. It doesn't really, even in those situations, it doesn't really matter. Fogs come to mind, but who's playing with fogs?
If you want
it just feels like Strangle.
1 mana deal 3, this is another in a long line of 1 mana deal 3s.
Yeah,
and they're all.
And
good.
I didn't
really
know
good.
I didn't know where I'd put Strangle as like an A or a B. It's really good removal, but even 1-for-1 removal, I don't know if it gets up into like A range, but. I guess I would recommend Strangle for any cube, so I don't know why I wouldn't say this is an A.
Well, I think the argument is just that there's so many of them now. It's like you only want to play with the best ones. I don't think this is the best one, but yeah, it's very solid.
Sure. I mean, clearly worse than
Lightning
Lightning Bolt.
Are you going to recommend this over Galvanic? Are you going to recommend this over Flame Slash, Chain Lightning?
Right.
Good point. Good point.
But
all right,
but it's
green. 3 green cards here. The first one's a pretty obvious high contender from this set. Experimental Scientist, 1 in a green, 2/2. When it enters, search your library for a basic land card and put it into your hand.
Tempted to say this is an S tier card, but I think when I compare it to the cards that I would actually consider S at the 2-drop slot in green, it comes up, in my mind, I think it probably comes up a little short compared to like Tough Cookie and Kappa, but like really, really good.
Well, it's funny if you compare this, so the comps are stuff like District Guide, which costs 1 more than this, but can also get a Guild Gate. There's Sylvan Rager, which is a 1/1 and has the same text box as this. If you do that, it's like, oh my god, what incredible power creep. And it's like, yes, that is true. On the other hand, I don't think those cards are particularly cubable at all.
Right.
And if instead you compare this to 3-drops like, instead of District Guide, compared to 3-drops that are actually good, like Satina or Summon Fenrir, then it's like, okay, well, it makes a lot of sense that this card says what it says. So I think the fact that it's power crept so hard and the fact that it's now a 2-mana 2/2 cantripping creature, which I think that in the early game, sometimes this line of text is better than cantrip. In the late game, it's usually going to be worse, but when you're playing with Social or whatever, it's like a push. So yeah, all that to me means kind of slam dunk A. I don't think it gets up to that S range because, again, to me, cards like Satina, cards like Summon Fenrir, those are the green S's, Tough Cookie, etc. And this, just the fact that this is such a big power creep on a prior effect doesn't, for me, get it up to that S level, but it's obviously great.
Yeah, it's like it's probably the best in class for this effect, but this effect is weak enough that it's like doesn't quite get into that S tier territory. Yeah, I think when you compare it to cards we've rated S, I'm a little lower than that, but it's close. Like I have it as like an A plus ish card. This is probably the best card in the set generically for cube.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I like an elvish visionary that makes sure you always play the game. I'm super into that.
Yeah, love cards that let me not brick on lands.
All right, adaptive evolution. This is 3 green enchantment. When this enchantment enters, create a fractal token. Put 3 +1/+1 counters on it. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains vigilance until end of turn. So baseline, 5 mana 3/3, could be 5 mana 4/4 if it targets itself, but you can put the +1 counter everywhere. And notably, this is an enchantment, not a creature, so you can do things with this being a permanent on the battlefield. Plus, if your opponent kills the 3/3, you still have the residual +1/+1 every turn, like the Luminarch Aspirant ability.
Well, it's cool because it makes a 0/0. So if you have the stuff that changes base power and toughness around, like the flyer that turns the thing into a 4/4 or whatever, there's some kind of cool stuff you can get up to with that.
Yeah, so this is close, but I think it's just a little too expensive.
Yeah, I agree. Dormant Grove is a very cool card. It's a 4-mana version of this, but you don't get the creature up front. You have to flip it into the creature, and it flips into a 3/6. I love that card, and I found it to just be too slow for cube. I think that this card really solves the problem of Dormant Grove and giving you that creature up front, but making it 5 mana just makes it a tough sell, I think, for our environments. However, in slower environments, I think it's going to be really, engine card keeps adding power and toughness to the board every turn.
I'd have been really into this at 4 mana. It'd kind of be like a side grade to the card we got in the last set, the mutagen guy. Was it Mikey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, BFF. Got a bad report on that one yesterday, by the way.
I think it's been okay, but not.
It's been okay.
Yeah, he's a green 4-drop.
Yeah, exactly.
that's my thoughts.
That's not trumpeting herd. Yeah.
Snarl Song is the last green card here. Really, no other green cards from the set that we pulled out. That seems sad. Okay, Snarl Song is 5 and a green for a sorcery. Converge, create 2/0/0 fractal tokens, put X +1/+1 counters on each of them, and gain X life, where X is the number of colors of mana spent to cast this spell. Let's go up the chain real quick. Assuming X is 3 to start with, are we happy with 6 mana, make 2 3/3s, gain 3 life?
If that's all I'm ever doing with it, no. But if that's the floor we're assuming in this deck, then sure.
Yeah, you will cast it. You will cast it for that sometimes when you need to, when you can't find your 4th and 5th, sources of mana.
And then 4 and above actually starts to look pretty good, right? 6 mana, 2 4/4s, gain 4. That seems rock solid to me. It's like a big trumpet and herd almost, and then X is 5 is actually like really pretty strong. The gain 5 life being pretty good there too.
It feels like a lot of work to get Autarch Mammoth worth of stats, though. It is.
Yeah, but you're also gaining a bunch of life.
If you're getting to 4 and 5 mana, this is better. I agree. I'm just saying that card didn't require me to jump through a million hoops. I just had to get to 6 mana.
Yeah, I think the life gain is the relevant bit here because Autarch Mammoth doesn't do anything when you're getting beaten down with Battle Screech or whatever. But
at X is 3, we should just be playing Rise of the Ants. If we know we're casting it for 3.
Yeah, this is do you already have a multicolor theme in your cube and you want people to draft it? Then this actually seems rock solid. But this is not the card. This is not the one-off Dragon's Brood relic that I'm going to be like, okay, guys, here's your gold payoff.
Yeah, this is not the everything pizza that enables an archetype while also being relatively inoffensive. This is a card that takes up a real spot and kind of demands a lot out of you. But if you can get there, if you can consistently get to 4 and 5 mana on this card, it's a lot of output.
Yeah, to me, the 2 5-color payoffs I would go with first are Path of the World Tree and Everything Pizza. But yeah, if you're looking to really juice that for whatever reason in your environment, this seems like good top end. Yeah, like actual good top end, not just whatever.
Yeah, that's a cool shout. I'm glad you added that one to the list. All right, let's get into some
combos with Wizard Rockets. I feel like I need to mention that every time one of these cards come up.
Yep.
Yeah, so gold. It looks like your stuff might be
my bad.
a little.
Yeah, here I'll switch this around based on the thing. We got Sonar
okay, it's fine. So yeah, let's do Sonar here. This is, I guess, all the first year students from Warwind Eclipse are all back as uncommons. They've all got prepared spells and stuff like that. That's kind of neat, I suppose. Sonar Unfinished Genius. Really, I'm sorry, that's just a stupid name for a Magic card. Blue-red for a 0/4 legendary Goblin Sorcerer. It enters prepared. It can tap to create a treasure token if you've cast an instant or sorcery that turn.
He's got a wild idea.
I thought you were reading flavor text. Yeah, that's the prepare spell. Wild Idea is 3 blue-red sorcery. Search your library for an instant or sorcery, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle.
So, if the 5-mana mode was like the primary thing this card did, it would be terrible. That being said, the second line of text on this card, the tap to create a treasure token if you've cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, is like pretty compelling, except this is an 0/4. Even at 2 mana, like I'm just not really into this. I like especially in Is It, I want these cards to be able to pressure my opponent. Like if this were a 2/3, I would be like slam it up there in, A or B, but as it is, I feel like the deck that's going to want this bridge card, I don't really know what we're doing, that we're bridging these two cards, and we also are playing Is It, because like I'm looking at like Gleaming Gear Drakes and stuff in my Is It deck. That's what I want to be casting personally.
Yeah, I think this is not a card for an Artifacts Matters blue-red archetype. This is very much for the Spellslinger archetype. It's just a different way of generating mana in those archetypes, as opposed to Emperor Palamecia or Goblin Electromancer, which are other 2-drop options for mana generators in your Spellslinging archetype. This is just a different way to generate mana. And then what makes it interesting versus those cards is that prepared spell. That whole package to me is coherent enough that if you're Spellslinging, I think this is a fine 2-drop option versus those creatures that I already mentioned. But for us, I don't care. I think you do got to be Spellslinging to care about this at all.
Yeah, one cool thing if you're doing this as a Spellslinging card that just kind of hit me is like being able to tutor, having a second copy of Rise from the Tides in your deck, essentially being able to tutor it up is pretty powerful, considering the decks that are doing the Spellslinger thing usually need Rise from the Tides, and they just cannot win without that card.
Or searching out your Divergent equation to then get a lot of, whatever. Or
sure,
even just to search up your stock up, just like, at that phase of the game. And note that the card that I have it right next to in the tier list is Mika, and it does work nicely with Mika. So, I don't know. Maybe there's something there to explore.
A little annoying that this doesn't put an instant or sorcery in the graveyard for the things like Rise from the Tide, which I think is actually kind of meaningful when you're spending your turn 5 to get your turn 6.
I suppose,
Sure.
Also, academic flavor
your
fail.
turn 3 was Forbidden Alchemy, and your turn 4 was I don't know, what's the one that draws some cards and puts cards in
Forbidden. I don't know. Serpentine Curve for one. This is a first year student, but also a tutor. I would never hire a tutor, a first year student as a tutor. That's a huge flavor fail. Also, Unfinished Genius makes him sound like a portrait. That's just a dumb name.
He's a sculptor. Yeah, he's a sculptor.
Is he? I guess he is.
Yeah,
I guess that's what's going on.
I don't know.
All right, Lewin, exchange student, the one first-year student that nobody remembers from Strixhaven, by the way. This is 2 black-green for a 3/4 legendary elf druid. It enters prepared. Exile a creature. This is just an activated ability, no mana cost. Exile a creature card from your graveyard. Lewin becomes prepared. Activate only as a sorcery. And notably, it does come prepared the first time. So the sorcery here is Pest Friend. It's black-green Golgari hybrid mana, so 1 mana for a sorcery. Create a pest token, and these are the pests that gain a life when they attack, not when they die. Synthesis. 4 mana, 3/4. You can pay 1 to make a pest, and you can recharge that for every creature in your graveyard that you can exile, to then pay another 1 to make another pest.
Yeah, this is probably in the cube context like a more reliable Insidious Roots. The output's a lot worse, but at least we've got some sort of baseline, but the baseline here is pretty bad, so I'm not really giving that a lot of credit. This is like a 5-drop anyways, right? We're casting this and being able to do the spell immediately. We get like 4 or 5 worth of stats, and that's not great for 5 mana.
I would hope.
We need to really get some more out of this than what it's offering up front.
Yeah, you got to be playing with this with Roots. You got to be playing with this with the black room from Duskmourn. Like you got to care about Gravebreak in my mind to be playing this. But I mean, if you already wanted to be doing a Roots theme in your environment, I think it would be really coherent to just have these two as your black green payoffs. I think that the potential on this card is really high. Like especially, you imagine a scenario where you have Roots down, you untap with this, and now every mana that you spend creates 2 creatures, and the plants are all growing as you're doing it. It's like that's to me pretty compelling. I just don't think that strategy works particularly well, at least in my environment. And I think in y'all's environment, it ended up being more cute than good in the end, even though sometimes it could do really, really powerful things, especially if you have Roots in your opening hand. So even just having like 1 extra way of kind of doing this in the space, I do think matters. I think that like in those Gravebreak strategies, you were really reliant on a couple of cards, and oftentimes it was like kind of a Scrabbling Clause or something that was like really too narrow to be running in cube most of the time, and maybe you don't need that. anymore to be running this strategy. So I think the card's relatively powerful. It's just asking you to do a strat that I don't think is particularly compelling to me, but I know a lot of people like it, and I think it would be fine to test.
All right,
Makes
rules
it a
question.
easy
Can
C.
we can just use this ability even if we are already prepared, right? We don't have to unprepare
Correct.
to re-prepare. We can just do this.
Correct, yeah.
I don't think I understand the question.
If it's already prepared, it doesn't matter. Yes, the cost on the card is exile a creature card from your graveyard.
Sure,
the cost isn't if this is unprepared, do that. So yes, you can activate it.
Yeah.
multiple times.
Okay. I mean, that's like a definitional C almost. Essence Knit Scholar. So I don't know if this cycle has a name or not, but there's a cycle of these like pseudo hybrid cards that have one of each of their school's mana pips and then a hybrid symbol for that mana pip. And most of them are actually rock solid cards. This one is the Golgari one, Witherbloom one. It's black, green, and then a black green hybrid symbol. So 3 mana, 3/1, Dryad Warlock. When it enters, create a 1/1 pest token that gains a life when it attacks. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died under your control this turn, draw a card. I went A on this one. I think this card's pretty strong.
That second line of text is pretty strong. Like, there's not a lot of, again, engine card draw creatures available to us in Peasant, and the fact that this card draw engine creature comes attached to 2 bodies for 3 mana and 4/2 worth of stats, like, I think this seems very exciting to me. The thing that like gives me a little bit of pause is green black for me usually isn't about sacrifice, not necessarily about your creatures dying. It can be, but it's often about like self-milling, or now it's about food a lot more often, which doesn't really care about this line of text at all. So I think there's like a bit of a cube equity consideration for me. I don't know exactly if this just goes into every green black deck, but it probably does. It's probably just a card that goes everywhere, and then sometimes when you're playing with your Junes and your Judies, it's going to be particularly impressive. But to me, it's like you almost have to test it just because that second line is so strong. Like, it's not Morbid Opportunist, but it's not that far off.
Yeah, I mean, and this also avoids like the very rare but occasional floor Morbid Opportunists, where even if they just kill this immediately, you still go up at least a 1/1, which is it's better than nothing.
Yeah, it's to me, one of the problems is it's competing with again, competition, whatever.
Yeah.
It's in the same spot as Honest Rutstein in the Golgari section, which is, if you want a universally playable Golgari card, Honest Rutstein is the way to go. So yeah, maybe B is correct because R-Cube, this does not actually fit the context of Golgari that well in R-Cube, but I would still hesitate to, I would still hesitate to think I'm not putting this in one of my black-green food decks still.
Even with the food theming, I'm pretty sure this is just going to end up being better than Greta, right? Like, Greta's fine, but
then there's cube equity considerations of like, would you rather signal food with Greta than just put this generic card in? That's the concern I have is equity. Yeah. But it's a great card. It's a great card.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, especially in your like larger environment.
For what it's worth, I would love to do like a whole episode on equity at some point, because we throw that terminology around a lot, and it's not immediately apparent.
Well,
I think
what I mean
means
is that there's a limited number of slots you have available for almost anything you want to do in Cube, but certainly for guild slots. And for some people, it's extremely limited. There's some 360s I see where they don't want to play more than like 2 gold cards per guild. So the question is, what do you do with those gold slots? And one thing you could do is just have gold cards that are going to be good no matter what people are doing in that 2-color pair. And I do think that this card fits that bill reasonably well. This is just going to be a good card basically all the time, but it does signal to your draft for something specific in that second line of text where it's like, oh, okay, this cube curator wants me to be doing sacrifice stuff. And then is that really true in your green-black section that, that's the thing that green-black will be doing often, versus a card like Rutstein, which is very clear. It just wants you to grind and maybe do some self-milling, and that's the thing that usually speaking any green-black deck is going to be able to do. Or then something like Greta, which is very specific and narrow in what it's asking for you to do, but assuming you've supported that, that's like you as the cube curator communicating something very relevant to your drafters. So you're not necessarily communicating what you want to communicate by putting this card in your cube, but it's certainly a very good card.
Yeah, to your point, somebody mentioned to us a ways back that they were, after we made the change in Green Black and we put in Greta and Vine Rate Mentor, that they were a little confused when they drafted because they took the signpost of graveyard stuff with like Brood Spinner or Honest Rutstein and then also saw the signpost for food. And it's like, well, we're not really using them for signposts. That's not really the intent. But I get what you mean. If you aren't familiar with the context of the cube, if you haven't really paid attention to the list, like there can be some confusion if you're running, themes that aren't necessarily aligned in those sections.
Okay, another one of these hybrid cards, one of 3, I think we bought it. Did you guys see the Orzhov one is just like a giant cantrip creature? But
Yeah, it's so bad.
all right, this one's really sweet. It's Practiced Scrollsmith. It's red, white, and a red-white hybrid. 3 mana total for a 3/2 Dwarf Cleric with First Strike. When it enters, exile target non-creature, non-land card from your graveyard. Sorry,
keep going.
Boros one. When it enters, exile a non-creature, non-land card from your graveyard, and until the end of your next turn, you may cast that card. Another just super sleek design for like the Warhold Gravebreak stuff, because this is just a powerful card that will also enable synergies, which I think is what you need if you're going to make that Gravebreak thing work for retail limited, but also just like kind of a banger card for Cube too. Like this is Boros Eternal Witness almost.
This is just everything. The Boros decks that I just keep drafting, that I can't stop myself from drafting, this is just the card for these decks, right? It's just like, it's a value card that like cares about there being a carrot cake or a synth in the graveyard or whatever, and just like, we also get a bunch of random synergies. We can turn it into a Chupacabra. If we get a Go Ninja Go, we can go absolutely ham. This is my favorite card in this set.
We all put
I love
A here.
I love everything about this card. I really been enjoying playing these like moderately aggressive Boros decks where you're much more concerned about grinding value and chipping away at life totals, and this is a perfect fit for those style of decks.
No, I think the baseline for this card almost is Chupacabra in the sense that, like, usually, probably, you're just going to want to hit your Lightning Bolt with this or your Galvanic Blast or whatever. But the fact that you don't have to wait till 4 mana to play this, that's crazy. Like, you play this on 3, and now you have your Lightning Bolt bank for next turn. Like, that's
rebuy your Magic
crazy
Codes.
to me. Or sure, yeah, obviously there's many things it can do in the kind of white-red game object space that's exciting. But just the fact that, okay, don't worry about any of that stuff. You can also just hit your Lightning Bolt for 3. On 3, you have a better Chupacabra. It's like, I think this has an argument for S. The reason why I don't want to put it there is, again, kind of that cube equity consideration of like, this isn't necessarily communicating what I want out of my white-red section. I'm definitely going to play it. And it's not that you can't play an archetype specifically based around this, but I don't know that the average drafter is ready for that. I think the average drafter drafts red-white because they want to be doing aggro stuff or go-white stuff or some combination of those two things. And so this is a little bit of a weird card to slip in there, but it's so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, even in Boros, 2 of our Boros cards, Scurry of Gremlins and Heroic Intervention, those are non-creature, non-land cards.
Yeah. Go Ninja Go. Well, actually, 3 of the 4 at the moment. Everything except Arabella is a
Arabella, yeah. Yeah, what a sweet card. What a sweet card for Boros, too.
Very
You
tempted
wouldn't
to put
expect
this in
that.
S. But yeah, I agree that what held me back was that I assume people are going to expect Boros to be an aggro deck, and this card is not. It's not that. Like, it can do that. It can attack totally fine. It's got First Strike and 3 power. But I think when your drafters are drafting, this is going to be the kind of card that you have to be aware of what the cube is doing in order to really maximize it.
Yeah. Well, cards like this is why aggro sucks in 2026. Is because, like, imagine playing an aggro deck into this. It's like, Jesus. Like, you have to kill this because it's got First Strike, and then for your troubles, they just kill one of your things for 1 mana or whatever.
They Iroh's Intervention, all of your small creatures, and then you're left trying to overcome the 3 power First Striker in play.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
I only didn't go S here because there are some times that you just don't have the graveyard set up to use it, in which case it's pretty medium. But
yeah.
Okay, Paradox Surveyor. This is the Quandrix one in the cycle. It's green, blue, and a green-blue hybrid. 3 mana total for a 3/3 Elf Druid with reach. When it enters, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a land or a card with X in its mana cost and put it into your hand, and the rest go to the bottom.
Man, like, comparing white and red cards to what the Simic section.
This was Simic's time to shine. This was Simic's time to get. I looked at this card. I saw a big text box. I saw reach, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be sweet." And then I was like, "It's a cantrip creature, and a very limited one at that."
Yeah, like we really couldn't have done Simic better than this. Like, we could have had something that made like a big fractal or something.
Yeah, I mean, so comparing this to Contagious Vorak. It does go 1 card deeper, which is nice, I suppose. Vorak is a 3 mana 3/3 that gets to look at the top 4. You put a land into it, a land from that among those 4 into your hand, or you proliferate. I think that proliferate is largely fake, especially in green. So this is like a meaningful upgrade on Vorak in 2 different ways. One is the reach, and then one is getting to go 1 card deeper. But yeah, how compelling is that, especially at 3 mana, especially when we already have access to Satina and Summon Fenrir, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, I just don't know how much I care about this.
Well, the other thing of this is, like, if you've got access to good X spells, and there are some good ones. There are some really good ones, actually. Repulsive Mutation, Tyvar Stand, Choco Comet, Fear Fire Foes, all fantastic. The problem is that this either requires you to be in like a 3-color deck, right? Because a lot of the good ones are in red. You know, the best ones arguably are in red outside of the 2 green ones I mentioned, Repulsive Mutation and Tyvar Stand. But those are also cards that are much more powerful when your opponent doesn't know that you have them, or like they aren't sure that you have them. And like, if you're just playing it face up, I'm sure it's still good to have these cards, but it's a lot easier, or at least more manageable, to play around a Repulsive Mutation or a Tyvar Stand if you know it's coming.
Well, I think that line of text is honestly kind of fake. Like, imagine you have 3 X-Spells in your deck, which is not easy to do, not only from the perspective of having that many in your cube, but then you drafted all of those to pair with this. But even if you have 3, you're only seeing one of those a third of the time when you cast this. So it's like, yes, it is a boost in the value on this card, but it's not. I think the vast majority of the time, like, if this goes into cubes, 95% of the time, it's just going to be hitting a land. It's just a Vorak, and it's a slightly better Vorak, but it's not that good. You know, I think if you want a 3-drop to play around in your land space in blue-green, I think I'd just rather have Ignis Scientia, and I don't think that card is all that busted either, but I think it's better.
Yeah, I know it's not the card we got, but I kind of wish this was like a 3-drop that did something, and then maybe we could sink some mana to make a fractal, like an exhaust ability or a prepared spell or something.
Yeah,
sure. I did just look, by the way, and JDG Peasant 360 has 3 gold cards in the entire blue-green, or 3 X spells in the entire blue-green spectrum.
It's just very hard to do.
Okay, Scolding Administrator is next. This is white-black 2/2 Dwarf Cleric with Menace or Repartee. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, targets a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and when this creature dies, if it had counters on it, put those counters on up to 1 target creature.
I put it here next to the Scorn Mage because they're obviously going in the exact same cube. I think in the same cube, you could consider Graduation Day, which is a card we didn't talk about from the set. It's a 1-mana enchantment that has the Repartee text and you can just put the counter anywhere you want. And then I think you also would consider Killian from original Strixhaven. That's the 2-mana 2/2 lifelink menace that says spells you cast that target a creature costs 2 less to cast. So I think what's interesting about this card is there's enough, potentially, if you want to be doing a heroic-ish style game plan, if you're doing Spellslinger stuff in general in your cube, I think we have enough support here that you could push this as an actual theme, and that's exciting. It's new. We haven't really had that before, at least not in white-black. I would definitely be considering doing white-red heroic alongside this as well. So, I think that's cool. That's interesting. I don't think for us it's something that we're ever going to be doing unless something drastically changes in the next year of cards they're releasing, but I can definitely imagine a cube that goes down that lane, and I think for that cube, this card seems pretty strong to me.
Yeah, I think you can mostly ignore the last line of text, and if it comes up, it's nice. It's a cute little bonus, but I would never bank on getting to transfer my counters.
Well, you put them on your Killian after they kill this. That's kind of nice, but yeah.
Yeah, it's great if that happens. I just mean that I wouldn't intend on it. I assume they're going to exile this or bounce it or whatever. But yeah, just on rate, I mean, 2/2 menace that grows is like totally fine. Gabranth was another one we saw, and that one kind of underperformed because it's harder. I think it's harder to sculpt an aggro plan that wants to be doing like things going to the graveyard. This one makes a little more sense for like a snowbally aggro card. You can imagine like going turn 1 the first year student or whatever into this guy, and then doing some repartee stuff and pushing through skullduggering people and pushing through damage.
Yeah. It'd be really cool with this because it moves its counters to anything when it dies. Is if you could play this with like some good blight card that puts -1/-1 counters on it, and then it dies, and you get your blight bonus, and then you put the -1 counters on an opponent's creature and kill their creature off. That would be pretty sweet. But I don't think any of the blight cards were very compelling. So, and that's just cute anyway. But
it's your sour bread Monty combo piece, yeah.
They put a bunch of stun counters on this. You sack it and you put all the stun counters somewhere else. I don't know. There's probably something cool there. Warhold Charm, first of a couple charms that we'll talk about here. This is red-white for an instant. Choose one. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token artifact of their choice. Return target artifact or creature with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, or creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn. This, in my book, is the best of the new charms that we got.
Yeah, second and third effects here are both best in class or best in class adjacent. We haven't seen +1/+1 and trample at instant speed for 2 mana before. We haven't seen instant speed to like kind of recommission, which is kind of what the card is doing. So that makes me perk up a little bit. I think you do want to be playing around with both of these potential lanes in white-red, as in go wide aggro or kind of game object-y stuff. That's what I'm thinking about with this. Like, it's going to play well in your practice scroll smith kind of a space. But, instant speed, reanimate your carrot cake, or instant speed, reanimate your Michiko's Rain of Truth or whatever. It's like that. There's some kind of cool stuff that you could look to do there.
Not that one. Not that one.
Oh, my bad. It has to be artifact.
Can I interest you instead in your opponent killed your Arabella and then you reanimate it on instep? Yeah.
Sure, yeah. And then the top line of text isn't nothing. It's not like some creatures that kills. Annex Entry, Tough Cookie, Arabella, Osseous Stick Twister. Like, these are potentially important cards.
Metal.
So, I think that will happen every once in a while. But I think overall the full package here is compelling enough. It's a charm. None of the modes are that exciting, but if you can make use of a number of them, then it's probably solid.
+1/+1 and trample is kind of exciting, but I agree it's not like blows your mind exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, yeah, I mean, the middle mode also not bringing your creature back tapped, bring back Gory Heathlings, block your 2/2 sounds kind of fun to me too. Yeah, this is a prime example of like what I think good modality looks like, and it's hard to parse out why this is good a modality and the other charms are not necessarily good modality, but again, conversation for another time.
There's one or two modes we're actively interested in clicking. Like, we're not disappointed when we click the reanimate or buff mode, right?
Well, yeah, it's the combination, right? Because maybe I'm wrong, but you wouldn't play either of those as a single card if that's all they did. So it really is the modality that's carrying this.
But you
charm.
still need a button to click that you're generally happy to click a fair amount of the time, and I think that is, again, as long as you're doing one of those two things, then you're going to be happy to click those modes.
Because there's more than one here that you're happy with.
Right.
Okay. Silver Quill Charm, black white instant. Choose one. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. Exile target creature with power 2 or less, or each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life.
Once again, top mode is best in class. We have not seen instant speed for 2 mana to put 2 +1/+1 counters on something. Green is the color that does this the best, and you have to pay 3 mana for that in green. So that's interesting to me. How good is white-black at making use of that? Maybe not great. Like, if you're doing some kind of a flyers thing, I mean, you're putting those counters on one of your bats, for instance, then it starts to get exciting, maybe on your Stick Twister. But I don't love that mode, but it is best in class. And then the second mode is like a Last Breath, but better. It's not like I would play Last Breath in my cube these days, but Exile is, generally speaking, pretty useful. And the vast majority of creatures in my cube have power 2 or less, at least at the beginning. So I think you're going to be able to at least 1-for-1 with this enough of the time that, again, you need that one mode that you're at least reasonably happy to hit. I think you're pretty happy to hit that mode enough. Then the top mode or the bottom mode, which sometimes Helix their face wins the game, makes this a playable charm, but I'm not quite as excited about this as the last one.
Yeah, I'm also a little less excited about this one because in the last set we got, is it Kyrie's Technique, I think is the name of the cards, the sneak black-white spell, or Karai, yeah. And we've actually been playing that one, and when I've seen it, it's been pretty good because you get both modes, so a lot of times it's like kill a thing, push some damage. And this is a more efficient card, but I don't know if it's going to give you the same level of upside that card gives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this feels like using a gold slot on a, fine removal spell, and then you get the upside of a combat trick potentially instead, or, 5% finisher or whatever, which is fine, but Orzhov's a pretty packed section, enough to, I don't really particularly care to run this over, other Orzhov gold cards.
What about another Orzhov gold card?
Social Snub. This art's so stupid. It's one white-black sorcery. When you cast a spell while you control a creature, you may copy this spell. Each player sacrifices a creature of their choice. Each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. So you have control over whether this is 3 mana, each player sack a creature, drain 1, or each player sack 2 creatures, drain 2.
You see, Tim, the joke is that the creature you have is sitting in her seat so that she can't have it, and they are snubbing her socially.
There's a subtext to this card that I am not happy with, but
sorry, the seat's taken.
Yeah, there's a much darker subtext here.
You gotta say it a little more Mean Girls-y. Sorry, the seat's taken.
I was thinking of the Forrest Gump line, but it's taken.
It's taken.
So edicts are terrible in our environments. There's so many armies that edicts are just really, really bad. I don't think I would consider this in our environments at all. However, not everybody's playing with every single token maker known to man, and if you're not, and you also have reassembling skeletons or the 1-drop Doom Dissenter variants for 1 mana or whatever, then to me, this card is like the most powerful edict ever printed. So, if edicts aren't terrible in your environment, then I think that this is a really solid card. But unfortunately, I think they're pretty terrible in our environments.
Yeah, this kind of ends up being like 3 mana for Barter and Blood that drains your opponent for 2, which, like, if that's what it's doing and Barter and Blood's a good card in your environment, that's a pretty banger spell.
Yeah, it's a little. It can't be Barter and Blood unless you have a creature in play. You have to have a creature to copy it. But yeah, like normally the way to break parity on Barter and Blood is to not have creatures in play or to do the sack fodder thing. So hopefully, obviously, you're probably doing that if you're playing this in your gold section anyway. Yeah, not interesting for us.
One thing you do need to mention too is that since it's copied, like if it's a Doom Dissenter, you will lose both your cards if that's all you've got.
If you've got the one thing in play, sure.
Good point. Yeah, you're right. Yep.
Yeah, it is also two instances of life gain, 2 instances of life loss, if that matters for anything.
For your Johnny Pridemate gamers, your Johnny Pridemate reassembling skeleton gamers.
I love stuff in Barter and Blood in my Johnny Pridemate decks. All right, Prismari Charm. This is the blue-red one. Costs blue-red for an instant. Surveil 2, then draw a card. Deal 1 damage to each of up to 2 creature targets. Cannot deal 2 damage to a single target. Or return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand.
Yeah, really solid spread of effects here, but this is one of those where it's like, is there any mode that you're always going to be happy to click on? I think the answer is no, but there is enough upside on at least the middle mode in my mind, the deal 1 damage to each up to 2 target creatures. That's the mode that like sometimes at least can 2-for-1 or 2-for-1 adjacent. And then the other 2 modes will come up sometimes and be fine. So this to me is the most charmiest of all the charms in the sense that like I'm never that happy probably on any of these modes, but the spread is pretty useful in different game states. The cube equity argument here I think is pretty weak.
Yeah, the one time you're really happy with this card is when somehow your opponent goes, Shoreline Looter into Mischievous Mystic, and you just get them both.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But
blue stays losing, yeah.
with the blue card, yeah. I just think that the downside of like, it's cool that these effects are like, because usually if the deal 1 is not good, it's a green deck and the bounce is better there. So I like that. I like you can also buy it out for a draw spell. But this is just ultimately, like you said, it's a really charmy charm. Like all the effects are like kind of okay, and they're just not enough here for me to be interested in. There's not enough upside on any of the buttons.
Yep. Same sentiment as you guys. There's not much to add to that one. I do think this is the honorary Quandrix charm, actually. Not Quandrix, Prismari charm, which we gave high praise to in the mainline review. I think this card is really good at higher power levels with some of the more pushed prowess creatures. It's Vibrant Outburst, blue-red, instant, deals 3 damage to any target, and tap up to 1 target creature.
This just is it Lightning Helix, right? I mean, like it's very similar in a lot of different game states to Lightning Helix, either because one way it's similar to Helix is that you're tapping down your opponent's creature that could have attacked you, and now you're gaining life. But also, it's incredible as just a way to push additional damage. Also, it can target your mouse, as you mentioned. There's a lot of things this card does. However, big however here in my mind, it is 2 mana to deal 3. We've talked about this before. There's just a big difference between the spells that can deal 2 extra damage versus the amount of mana spent to cast them versus the ones that only give you 1 extra damage. I don't play any lightning strikes anymore in my environment, so even calling it, is it Lightning Helix? I'm not trying to necessarily say that makes this an amazing card. I don't think Lightning Helix anymore is an amazing card. It's a card I run. I think it's solid, but it's not incredible. So I think this card is very similar to Lightning Helix. It probably has similar cube equity arguments. If you're willing to play with a removal spell in your gold section, I think this one is a solid one to play.
Yeah, I like this a little less here in Peasant than in the mainline review. I spoke very highly of it. I think here I still am into it, but 1, doesn't make a game object. 2, the games tend to go longer, so like tapping down for a tempo advantage isn't always going to be as valuable as it is in the mainline cube, where like if you're playing an aggressive Izzet deck, you're just going to kill people with the tempo advantage. So I think there's a lot, like I think the slower pace of game and the lack of game object card advantage on this card makes me like it less here, but it's probably still totally rock solid.
Yeah, one thing I really like about this design is it's kind of hard to get right if you are doing the spells thing, because there's so much support to do is it control, and as much support to do like is it aggro, is it tempo, or something like that, and a lot of cubes or a lot of lists can kind of cross it over a little bit too much, and this is good in either. It's better if you're proactive and you're pushing damage, but it's actually pretty good as a defensive spell to pop one thing and stop another attacker for the turn. It seems to me like you're unlikely to take damage the turn that you cast this if you're using it defensively, and you're very likely to deal a lot of damage the turn you cast it if you're offensive, which is, it covers both of those bases. I agree with you, Teld. I think this is like marginally worse here because the stuff surrounding it, the payoffs for casting your spells aren't quite as pronounced as they would be in your mainline cube with all the good prowess creatures and things like that, but. This still strikes me as just a very good Izzet card, like kind of for all flavors of Izzet. And we all have it as a B too, which is rock solid great for that.
So are there any A's here that get up to S? Because this is the first tier list. Maybe no, that's not true. I think we've had some tiers before that we didn't have S's in. But I think Scrollsmith or Scientist could maybe get there, but I'm inclined to leave them.
Yeah, if it was just this set, just contained within this set, and we wanted to name the best card as an S, then yeah, it's one of those two. But if we're comparing it across everything else that we've already put an S on,
and I think that's the goal here. That's why we're using this tier list format, is to try to compare where our thoughts are on these cards relative to other cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
I think I like
no S.
Everything in B. I don't think there's anything I'm seeing in C that would. I mean, maybe Dual Tactics in a few weeks. Or after testing gets there, but for now I think, and Mika. I think Mika is so weird of a card that it could end up being a lot better than it seems. But 4 mana 4/4, I'm inclined to leave it low for now. And then for so many of the cards we're putting in C here, we're putting because they require particular themes in your environment that we're not running. But that doesn't necessarily mean that in your environments where you are running these themes, they're not going to be very solid cards. So a lot of this stuff in your cube environment that's set up more like Secrets of Strixhaven, these are going to be more like Bs. Probably no As, but they'll play out more powerfully.
Yeah, I think in addition to Mika and Dual Tactics, I wouldn't be too surprised if either of those black 3-drops should be bumped up at some point. I'm not willing to do it right now. I like leaving them both in C, but I wouldn't be too surprised if something happens really soon where either of those cards are like, oh, these are must-play black 3-drops compared to the other black 3s.
Yeah, and I think that these are clearly kind of the worst ones here. I think this might be a joke to leave this as high as it is, but it says draw 2 cards on it. It's tough. But yeah, the rest this looks pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah, I'm so disappointed about that cat though. That card all the way at the bottom. I'm so I'm so mad at myself too.
It was bad that both of us also read that, knew that you thought it came in prepared, and it just let you walk into the bear trap.
Well, I wasn't positive, as I was like, hey, maybe he's thinking about something here that I'm not seeing. But yeah, I figured that was probably
whatever the opposite of let him cook is. That's what you guys thought. Let him burn. Let him burn.
Let him freeze. Yeah.
All right, so no S tier. That's notable here. There was also a lot of extra cards that were originally on our show notes to talk about, but I felt like the conversation was going to end up the same thing of either a repartee card that isn't supported and we just have the same conversation, or instant sorcery matters and it's not interested enough to have the conversation about the card without just landing on that same summary of play this in your cubes that have a bunch of instant sorceries and are pushing that theme. And that's kind of the story of Strixhaven anyway. The whole set is themed around instants and sorceries. Again, big bummer that the bonus sheet didn't deliver anything here. Maybe I don't think the special guests even has anything that we would care about if it was bumped down, rarity downshifted.
And there's a few green cards we need to talk about that care about either life gain or are converge payoffs or whatever, that again similar to kind of in the same lane of maybe they're playable if you're doing life gain stuff, maybe they're playable if you're doing 5-color stuff, but they just didn't seem particularly compelling to talk about.
Yeah. Possible new directions for some color pairs. I think I do think with the release of this set specifically, the Mardu Spectrum Heroic is something that I think people could experiment with. And I think there's enough cross synergy with white kind of being the middle ground there to make that work out. And, you can totally bolster all your life gain strategies, your instant sorcery strategies. So cool set overall. I mean, I'm really happy about the prepared mechanic. It's unfortunate that a lot of the prepared cards just aren't really compelling enough to make it in, but I think the mechanic's cool. I like repartee. I like increments. Opus, I don't really care. Flashback is flashback. So what would you guys say? What's your final opinion here on Secrets of Strixhaven for Peasant Cube?
These like top 7 cards I'm pretty excited to mess around with, and there's a couple of others smattered around. I think the set looks interesting. I think Prepared will play out really cool in retail and be fun. I wouldn't say I'm super excited about this set, but I have put in my requisite 100 hours or whatever into Slay the Spire 2, where I'll at least probably draft this set.
Yeah, I think that it depends on kind of what you want for Peasant at the moment. Like what I want for Peasant is people to kind of be getting closer and closer to each other in terms of what the best stuff to be playing is, and that the format's kind of getting more definition around it, similar to more powered environments like Vintage Cube. I think it's useful when we're all communicating about the same concepts when we're talking about Peasant. But I've heard other people talk about how they really enjoy the fact that we're getting more of these sets that are juicing strategies which maybe aren't the particularly best strategies or most powerful strategies to be running in Peasant right now, because that leads to more variety in Peasant Cube. So if that's what you want, then I think this set is really perfect for that.
Well, I think both of those things can be true, right? It's like, I think part of what our goal here is to get the conversation around if you're just talking about what the good cards are, these are the good cards. And then we can have that conversation of, this is the stuff I want to do. How do I enable that? And it might be you don't play as many of the really, really good cards because they're going to push out some of those weaker or more niche things. So yeah, because like we have that conversation around more powered rare environments in our cube discussion, where like because there's more of a defined, this is what the really, really strong stuff is, people kind of can more easily recognize that they need to cut certain things to make other things work. And I think that's a little foggier in Peasant, and I'm hoping that as we're doing this, we're kind of clarifying kind of what those good cards are, so that we can have that conversation about how you can make your things work.
100%. So yeah, cool set. Time to graduate. We'll see. We'll revisit whatever we missed from this set soon enough. We always seem to miss some S tier limited card and then come back around to it. Got my eyes on a couple things here, but yeah, thanks to everybody as always for hanging out, and hope you enjoyed the tier list in here. I hope let us know as always what you think of the tier listing for the reviews. It seems like people are on board with tier listing being kind of like the thing that's going on with Jank Diver Gaming right now. It's really fun for us to do, and hopefully it's fun for everybody else to listen to as well. Next set releases like in the end of June, so we've got a little ways to go before that one. We'll have some other content out as well, and if you haven't listened to episode 65 of the podcast yet on our review of Strixhaven for mainline higher rarity cubes, I suggest you go check that out as well. But that's going to go ahead and do it for this one. Reminder that you can find Jank Diver Gaming on Twitter at Jank Diver Gaming, youtube.com/Jank Diver Gaming. Danelius, sorry I didn't mention it at the top of the episode, but you can find the Danelius' Peasant All-Star Cube on Cube Cobra. It'll be linked here in the description as well. And you can come find us in Discord and come talk to me, talk to Teld, talk to Danelius, or I don't know, talk to somebody else you like if you like them more, and keep the conversation going there.
One quick note is that the cube voting should be starting very soon after this episode goes up, as my guess, or maybe in the week or two after this episode goes up, for CubeCon in Wisconsin this year. So we both, I think, have submitted our cubes for that event, and if you want to see our cubes at CubeCon this year, give us some votes.
Yeah, I figure whatever our next, maybe we should have mentioned that up front too. I figure whatever our next podcast episode is going to be, if it lines up with the voting dates, we should definitely mention that up top and just kind of get the community out there to start voting on those. It sounds like right now, Danelius and myself are almost definites to go, and Teld, we'll wrangle Teld in as well. Chris is a definite no. I got a definite no from him yesterday. But hope to see people there. That's going to be awesome if I get to go. But that's going to go do it. Thanks for hanging out, you two, and to the listener, thanks for hanging out as well, and we'll catch you all next time.